to have a little laugh.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're a couple minutes late, but it's not bad. So welcome to our monthly El Dorado Hills Community Council meeting for the month of June. This is Monday, June the 6th. And we have several things to cover in tonight's agenda. I will note that we do have a number of normal leadership team members who are absent. Vacation time has started, so good for them. So we're going to cut back on the number of reports this evening and continue that reporting in their areas until they're able to join us in a future meeting, whether it be July or beyond that. So with that, I would like to ask each of the leadership team members present up here before the body to just identify what their role is. Give us your name and what your role is in serving on the committee so people can associate names with roles, so to speak. So George, since you're also a supervisor, District 2, why don't you just give us your introduction, basically who you represent.
Okay. I'm Supervisor, District 2 Supervisor, and I represent pretty much all of South County. That's all the way from El Dorado Hills all the way to Grizzly Flat.
Bob Williams, appointed representative from District 2.
Richard Ross, good governance. Basically, I try to look at the accuracy, honesty, and accountability of county government.
I'm Cindy Munt, Supervisor Idle's assistant, and I do the community information and outreach for the community.
John Heidel, District 1 Supervisor.
John Davidson, District Planning Commissioner and Infrastructure Lead. District 1 Planning Commissioner and Infrastructure Lead.
Abby Guerrero, and I am the lead for Healthy Communities, and looking forward to having
All right, very good. And so I will mention that John Davey is normally part of our leadership team. He is out of town, I believe, this week. So we do have Tim White here representing APAC, so he will give the APAC report. Thank you, Tim, for standing in on that. So we will have a discussion about APAC when we get to that part of the agenda. So with that, we also like to recognize anyone who is a District 1 commissioner or committee members who may be present. And Dr. Corbier, would you like to tell us what your role is?
Every time you ask me that question, the answer is the same. I'm still trying to figure it out. But anyway, I serve on the Behavioral Health Commission.
We're all trying to figure it out.
That's right.
That's okay. That's okay. And Tito.
Tito Bladen, El Dorado County Commission on Aging, and also your senior assembly member for the California Senior Legislature.
Who's on the Zoom meeting, so we can move on beyond that. So we'll go to item 2. We're going to try to keep this moving. Adoption of the regular meeting agenda. Does anyone on the leadership team have any exceptions to the proposed agenda? Seeing none, we're going to accept the agenda as submitted. Number 3, public comment. This is the opportunity we would ask anyone who's present either in person or on Zoom who would like to comment on an item that's not on the agenda tonight. You're welcome to do so. We just ask that you have one of the microphones in front of you because this is necessary for our Zoom participants to hear you, and or you can stand at the podium, which I think that microphone is also supposed to be hot. So with that, Maria. Front and center. There you go.
It's really hard to hear what goes on at home. And I
It is.
imagine it's harder to hear when you sit anywhere far away from whoever is.
It is, that's true. It's very hard to hear.
Very hard to
The audio, the
understand
folks,
what's
yeah, it is.
going on. Statement.
Okay.
I'm going to read for it, so I don't stutter and do all that kind of weird stuff. Okay. This is a thread I started on El Dorado Hills discussions group on Facebook. Okay, and I say, my name is Maria White, and I am a volunteer for the Master Gardener program here in El Dorado County. Our mission is to educate in aspects of sustainable gardening and landscaping. We meet our community via outreach, where we address groups who contact us for speakers on any broad number of subjects. The program also offers public education classes at a growing number of venues around the county. And right now, this is getting to be a really busy time. So there are lots of opportunities to attend tons of classes. Let's see. Research-backed articles are also written by master gardeners and appear weekly in the Mountain Democrat and monthly in Village Life. Earlier this year, my pub ed class to be held at the El Dorado Hills CSD on Chickens 101 was canceled because I was told the CSD is not interested in the topic. It's okay, that's their prerogative. Last week, I was informed my piece on backyard chickens will not run in Village Life. The publication felt there was no interest here in El Dorado Hills nor Cameron Park on the subject. Again, it's okay, that's their prerogative. I totally accept the decisions of those who control their venues, right? Right?
Chief agrees.
What I hope to discuss is whether there truly is no interest in backyard chickens, or is there some concern that if any presentation were to be made, undesirable interest might arise? I'm aware that many of our CCNRs prohibit backyard flocks. I've thought these rules, some from decades ago, reflect the thinking that raising chickens is declassed. You know, I mean, a bunch of farmers raising chickens, cows, and we'll be having goats next. I've also heard many times we're described as a semi-rural community, especially in the face of proposed development. So what are we? Backyard flock raising is certainly a growing thing across this country. It's nothing new. But I'm not advocating that we raise chickens or be allowed to raise chickens. Simply, my gardening interests don't currently lie with controlling pests in the gardens. I can't tell you why your tomatoes are not doing well. What I've done is enjoyed reading about chickens, looking at pictures of chickens. And holy cow, there's some really interesting stuff out there about chickens that I would love to share. As a volunteer, we can choose to develop our interests and then share. So, do we have any thoughts on this matter? And I also want to add, I'm posting only as an individual. I'm not speaking for the organization. And then occurred to me earlier today, I wanted to add a couple of things. Our CSD is not a private organization. Village Life is privately owned, but as a news organization, has it a responsibility to the community? Yes or no? Who's deciding what we are interested in, or should be interested in, or should not be interested in? And I'd like that to just go down on the minutes. There are a few comments
It's a
on
rhetorical
Facebook.
question, right? I mean, obviously,
Totally.
you can't answer it, but-
We are asking that a discussion take place. I'm not pleading. I'm simply saying, is it this? Is it this? Is it something else? Should we wonder why? And yeah, I'm taking it personally because I spent a lot of time on this. And I will also mention, due to a scheduling snafu, my outreach presentation to a certain garden club did not happen. So my entire Master Gardener year has been totally blown up. Couldn't do outreach, couldn't do pub ed, couldn't get an article published. And I know weed pulling is open to me, but that's a different subject.
Okay, so we heard your message, and there's a lot of answers relative to each organization controlled by their own policies and administration, what's accepted, what isn't in terms of public meetings. The thing that is difficult is there's no one venue short of social media where you have free access to all of that, right? So that's what a lot of people are focused on, is just trying to get the word out. So you're doing that through Facebook. Nextdoor is another one. I'm sure you've been very involved with that. So those are, you're not involved with Nextdoor? Okay. Because I know Don Davey and others have been, and I get involved with it once in a while. So the social media is the easiest answer in terms of getting information to people. Oftentimes, organizations set up website, and if nothing else, there's an announcement about things coming up, visiting on the website. I know the Master Food Preservers has a website that's associated with UC Davis. I don't know if Master Food Gardeners have, or Master Gardeners have the same kind of website, right? Is there a local website?
Yes.
Okay, so what I would suggest with respect to my office, if you provide us that information, we can certainly put that out on our social media that advertises, so to speak, that there's new information, classes are being formed, whatever. If you're interested in the programs, here's the link to go look at. So we can certainly help you with that. But beyond that, it gets into a kind of an individual decision-making by each body as to what they're going to host and not host. I know it's not a good answer, but that's the best I can offer. So, but we'll help you get the word out through my office.
John,
Yes.
my point was not our inability to get the word out. The Master Gardeners are doing, I believe, a very good job getting the word out. What I'd like us as a community to talk about is how is the CSD, or why is the CSD, or should the CSD and or Village Life decide what it is we are interested in? Is it true that we as a community are not interested in a particular subject? Or, as several of you kind of went, the discussion of chickens is tricky. And maybe if we don't discuss it, maybe it will go away. And honestly, in this day and age, is it not true of pretty much everything that confronts us? If we don't talk about it, it may not exist. If we don't know about it, maybe we can't be activated or motivated to speak. I mean, how hard is that?
I think it's relatively simple, but I don't think we can help you with that discussion with the CSD or the Village Life, so.
No, but this is community council
Yes.
and is
We
a
heard your
venue.
Yes. It'll
And
be in our minutes.
yes,
So hopefully people will respond accordingly and try to get some action there. So thank you. Appreciate your inputs. Jim, you said you had something as well?
Yeah,
Category maybe?
I wanted to approach, I want to let people know what happened at the May 24th meeting of LAFCO. I think you all know what LAFCO is, a local agency formation committee. Every county in California has one. And we had a very long meeting on May 24th, and Chief Moe was there, Supervisors Heidel and Sternbo are the county supervisors who are on LAFCO. I'm also a LAFCO representative for the special districts. We had two very important topics that we discussed. Chief Johnson, as well as Chief Tim Cadero of County Fire, spoke and took questions for over an hour on the situation of fire, the fire departments in our county. And, you know, it is not particularly a good one. A lot of the fire districts are financially challenged. As I'm sure you're all aware, one of the fire districts, Cameron Park, has taken measures to close one of their fire stations, and for financial reasons, and they may have delayed that because of the huge outcry at the last public meeting that they had, their CSD. But, you know, if they do close that station, it's not just, oh, so what, they close a station? Well, that means, because we all have mutual aid for fire in this county, if they need us, El Dorado Hills Fire goes in. If something happens in Cameron Park, county fire will come in. It's the closest station that goes in to take care of the issue or the problem. So if Cameron Park CSD closes something down, it's going to affect our fire department as well. And that's fine. That's what we do. That's what the fire department in this county do. The people who work in those departments, firefighters, men and women, are terrific. Public servants do a great job. But there is an issue of financing, and there's not a lot of financing going in for a lot of these fire departments, and they are stressed. They're stressed hiring people. They're stressed with inadequate apparatus. They're stressed with even some of their stations need significant work. So that's one thing. If you take a look at the Zoom meeting that we had, to get a lot more detail, and maybe Chief Johnson will address that when he speaks about on public safety. Secondly, we also had an hour presentation from our executive director, Shiva Frenton, on El Dorado Hills City. And since you're all a community council, you should be concerned, or at least be be aware of what's going on with the cityhood effort. So the process to become a city is long and complicated and expensive. It's been discussed ad nauseum, both at the CSD. I'm not going to go into any further details here, but it will probably be a topic at the CSD meeting on Thursday night. At their May meeting, they gave the support of cityhood 2 months to show that it was something that the people of El Dorado Hills wanted, and they asked that people show up and support the cityhood and make their voices heard, and also maybe come with a checkbook so they could maybe show some financial support for cityhood. They said they get more people concerned about paddleball and sports teams and activities that have indicated any interest in cityhood. So that's what happened in Alaska. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that report, Tim. I appreciate that. Because there are a lot of interesting things happening in Alaska from time to time, but this seems to be a significant activity over the next, I'm going to say 6 months to a year. Well, Fire Summit and other things, people need to be involved if they're really concerned about their fire service and, more importantly, their fire insurance. Because I can almost guarantee you, if they close Station 88 in Cameron Park, there will be impacts on non-renewals and other things, because the response time will increase to certain areas closest to rescue, and that puts a huge burden on rescue and its limited resources. So that will play into somewhere adjustments in fire insurance rates and or non-renewals. There's just a lot of things going on, but people need to think about it from the standpoint of their personal situation and not just it's the fire department that's asking for more money or whatever it is. It's time to engage now, because the insurance situation just seems to be getting a little out of control. We have the SAFE program, or not SAFE, but FAIR program at the state, and that's what I'm hearing, anywhere from 3 times to 10 times the rate just for the fire part, and it doesn't cover your normal home insurance. And it's increasing. So, and the number of insurance companies that are shutting down in California or no longer taking new policies is increasing. So it's time for the public to step up and understand what that means to them personally, right? Because it's going to be more money out of your pocketbook if you're going to be insured. And I wouldn't recommend anybody go at risk and not insure their home.
Oh.
That's just, you know, not the place to go. So thank you for that.
John, can I ask a question?
Sure.
An observation. I attended remotely the LAFCO meeting, and it was an exceptionally good meeting, well orchestrated, thoughtful. Regarding the 2 parts, I left the end of the fire chief's presentation in a quandary as to precisely where LAFCO stood as a result of those presentations. Following morning, I actually had the opportunity to ask Chief Johnson whether or not anybody really actually understood what you guys were trying to say. He was very, very polite and very astute by saying, I can't understand, but I as a citizen, did feel like there was a polite response to the presentation. But unless I missed something, LAFCO didn't really take a position one way or the other on that presentation. Am I wrong?
We listened to the presentation. We've asked the Chiefs Association to take a lead in proposing solutions. They have done that. The next major step is to schedule a Fire Summit meeting. We're going to basically have a workshop format where all the public who's going to be involved can show up and voice their concerns, understand what the program is, and then I think you're going to find that LAFCO will be in a position to make a statement based upon what we've heard. This is the direction we think LAFCO has the ability to consolidate fire districts, but it's not something anybody wants to do. It's a politically charged arena. There's always going to be somebody mad, but they do have that authority. There's a process you have to go through, but nobody wants to move to that authority if we can convince the public and the representatives on the fire board that there's a better answer. Keep the fire districts the way they are, but they have to work together. I shouldn't say the way they are. Keep the fire districts operating to the best of their ability, but maybe do it in 3 different regions within El Dorado County as opposed to 12 different fire stations or some fire organizations. So consolidation from that perspective, but not trying to force anybody into a general model. County could do that. We could say all the fire in a process, right? But we could initiate a proposal to consolidate all the fire districts, and it's now gonna be operated by another entity defined by the county. I don't wanna go there. That's never, in my opinion, that's too much big government. The local services know best what their constituents need, and so I'd rather keep it that way, but there is this economic situation that's hard to avoid, and it's been going on for 20 years. It's not a new revelation. The new revelation is with the fires that we've had recently, what that means to your fire insurance, because those rates are going up all the time, non-renewals, et cetera. So people are starting to wake up as to what's going on as a result of that, but it's in their pocketbook, and that's what it takes to get the awakening sometimes.
Well, it's very good to hear that, we have three commissioners here, that you guys did understand and do those to the chiefs, and, hopefully the message, and the urgency, will continue to be a top priority for LAFCO in the future.
That summit meeting, I think, is gonna be very important in terms of getting all the information on the table, and I think that the net result is LAFCO will be looking for a recommendation from our executive officer that we can get behind, and we do have an ad hoc committee working that strategic planning, so, not strategic planning, it's the fire committee, but, so between members of the LAFCO commission and the executive officer, I believe there will be a recommendation coming back to the public after the fire summits have concluded with what is the best path forward and how do we get there. Okay. Because time is of the essence on it as well. I mean, you can't just continue to kick this problem downstream, which has happened for a long time. In my opinion, it's got to be dealt with. And everybody's of a mind to take that on.
That's very good here. But I can speak on that now.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, the biggest
Share
thing.
your perspective. Yeah.
Okay, very respected. Anyway, you know that they hired Don Aston as a consultant. And I
Cameron
thought-
Park.
For Cameron Park, CSD, and keeping the fire station. Well, he has a way to keep the fire station open. Station 88 will be open. And also it only costs the CSD about under $10,000 to keep it open. So he's working with he's working with all the numbers and stuff, and he's gonna be meeting with me here pretty soon, being that this is my district and the concerns of the residents there. So it's a good thing what he's done, and I'm very proud of him for what he's done. So anyway, we're moving forward with that. So we're not gonna close Station 88, but he's gonna present how we can do that. So
Ultimately, it's the CSD
Right,
board that
exactly.
decides that. So, and the CSD, Cameron Park is unique because they have responsibilities for parks and recreation and fire service. So it's a balancing act. How much money do you put in each one of those, right? And there's constituents that want more parks and recreation, there's constituents, whatever you do, don't decrease our fire service response time and stuff. So
public
there's
safety is number one priority. It should be anyway. So.
I totally agree, but everybody has a different.
Go on with some other stuff or no?
So,
Okay, into the other LAFCO part.
Yeah.
Which had to do with.
Cityhood?
Cityhood.
Yeah.
Issue. There was one thing, I thought the presentation was remarkably well laid out and very, very well presented in terms of all conditions that have to go through. There was one statement that I need clarification on, in as much as that CSD is cornerstone right now of the cityhood proposal. There was one statement that an agency such as CSD can educate the public, but they cannot advocate for a particular thing. Now, does advocacy equal money? Or does money?
if you're spending money on campaigns and flyers and distribution,
Or-
you've gone too far.
Okay.
If you're sending
Or
out
wrong
fact
message.
sheets and describing what happened, what the risk is,
Okay.
that's within that educate standard. So it is a little bit subjective, but as soon as you try to encourage somebody to vote a particular way on a measure, then you've gone too far. Now you're
But,
campaigning.
I guess the question is, to the degree they finance a study, is that educational or is that advocacy?
I'm gonna let them define that. Because I think we might look at it differently. So you'd have to
Okay.
ask the CSD board. That's the only fair way to do it.
I'm not gonna prove that, 50 anything. but-
Yeah, I don't think he will anyway.
Okay, I wanna move on since we have the guest speaker, but yeah, one go back?
It's the second part of presentation.
Yeah.
Or a comment you made regarding this seat.
Right.
And whether or not there's going to be any interest in the incorporation.
Right,
That
2 months.
doesn't seem to have grown. And I'm really surprised. I mean, after the executive golf course got put on hold, there didn't seem to be any benefit to we incorporated. It's too late to have a city mechanism to decide our own fate in development. And then Project Frontier came along and, oh my goodness, this place was packed. And now that has gone away and there's been no change in any interest in deciding our own fate. We are still utterly dependent on 3 out of 5 supervisors voting in our favor, and whatever that our favor may even be, because I'm not sure we're
That's at the end,
unanimous.
that's at the end of the LAFCO process where LAFCO gets to vote, but it's the CSD that's gotta determine they're gonna continue to fund, right?
No, my question really is to you, supervisor.
Hmm.
Why is there this lack of interest in something so important? Something that just really drives us nuts. The whole idea of development and planning, and it's up to the guys up the street who want to rob us blind to decide. Those are not my words.
I think the biggest reason, just to make it very clear, the threat of new taxes. Every time there's an effort going on in a corporation, you will hear any number of people, don't form a city or town, they'll just increase your taxes. And what I've seen is sometimes that's in the form of fees and not taxes, but the public considers a fee a tax. It's gonna cost me more money to have better services, I'm not interested. That's what a lot of people presume and look at. My position has always been, it depends on who you elect to be your leaders, like it does at the county level. If you select 5 town council members or 5 city council members who truly represent what this community wants in terms of land use and development, in terms of zoning, in terms of law enforcement, you'll end up with something that is not excessive expenditures, and people will appreciate it. But if you get people who are elected who have a mindset that we just need to spend more money, we'll get better services, I don't think that works. But that's the biggest argument against incorporation, is it'll be new taxes and fees. So that's the easiest way to capsulate it. I need to move on. So anybody on Zoom, we don't have anybody on Zoom with their hand raised, right?
No.
Okay, and we can continue the conversation, Maria. I've got a lot I could share, but it'd be lengthy. So sorry about that. It's my pleasure now to introduce our guest speaker, our Chief Probation Officer, Brian Richart, who's here to explain to us what a wonderful job he has, his current challenges, and what he's doing to fix all the problems. Okay. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. As Sean said, my name is Brian Richart, and I'm the campus probation officer. I left a little handout on the front table, passed it out to you. I will be referencing just a couple of things from it, but for the most part, it's just for your own pleasure reading in the quiet hours of the early morning when you can't sleep. So,
Because it'll help you sleep, right?
First, I'm actually here for the Dorado Hills Community Council. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you very much. I'm a resident of El Dorado Hills, so I read your propaganda. I appreciate it. I do. It helps keep me informed as a community member. And after living here 10 years and working in the county, sometimes I forget that we're broken into communities. And because I think of things relative to a county scale and how decisions and choices we make at a county level affect not just residents of El Dorado Hills, where I live, but South Lake Tahoe and everything in between. And we have to take all of that into consideration. I know that as a community member myself, sometimes it can feel like, as you mentioned here a moment ago, that we're not getting the benefit of the bargain, so to speak. That your elected officials or your professional officials not necessarily considering your particular needs when it comes to how things are established in the county. And I would say that is typically not the case, well, it might appear that way, but because largely we're responsible for the entirety of 180,000 plus residents. Real quick, I just want to give you the context of what I'm talking about relative to your probation department. So first of all, every county has a probation department. Right? There are 58 jurisdictions in California because there are 58 counties. There are 59 probation departments. Why? Because the county of San Francisco also has a city within it, and the city wanted its own probation department. So the city runs a probation department, the county runs a probation department. One chief works for the mayor of San Francisco, and and one chief works for the presiding judge of the Superior Court of the county of San Francisco. So San Francisco just had to be different, as they often have to be in many ways. So we have 59 jurisdictions in the state of California. El Dorado County Probation Department here, about 122 members in my probation department, about 83, 84, depending on our staffing, our sworn deputies for the probation department. They work in a variety of contexts. They work in either a courtroom setting, a community setting where they're doing supervision activities, or a residential setting, I should say locked residential setting, most of you know is in Hall. And they work up in South Tahoe running our juvenile hall for us. I have 30 some odd non-sworn or professional staff who help make the world go round for us, from our fiscal folks to our data entry folks to our reporting folks, our researchers, all those people that make sure that the deputies are able to do their jobs, which is to connect with our residents of the community, family members, victims of crime, and ensure that all of those mandates that are handed down from the state we're able to execute on. And they are numerous and have been growing year after year after year with regard to probation service in every jurisdiction in the state. It's interesting because I've been around in probation for about 26 years. Still hard for me to believe. But I've been a chief probation officer here in El Dorado County for over 9 years, and was a chief probation officer in the county of Shasta for about 4 years, and an executive in probation in the county of Alameda for about 3 years. So all told, I've been doing executive level probation work for about 17 years as a chief or a chief of staff, and been watching the change at a state level from that vantage point for that period of time. I can tell you that the difference between the probation service 17 years ago and what it is today is absolutely night and day, especially when it comes to the area and scope of responsibility. I'm sure if I were to ask any one of you individually, unless you have some inside knowledge, you would share with me that probation officers essentially work with kids. We all consider that. That we run juvenile halls. Most people are aware of that. And then we essentially watch people in the community. But it is so much more vast than those simplified notions. Would you be surprised to know that I run a treatment facility here in El Dorado County? I run a treatment facility that provides non-clinical intervention support on site at my probation department in Shingles. Might also surprise you to know that I run a housing complex. I have a 6-bed residential facility in Placerville that is for men who are suffering with addiction and homelessness. And we provide housing support, temporary housing support, to get them reoriented on their trajectory through that critical infrastructure so that we can ask them to do some of those higher level things like engage in drug treatment. For years, I mentioned I've been doing this for 6. When I was a probation officer with case carrying 25 years ago, I would tell people to go to treatment. And then when they didn't go to treatment, I would arrest them, and I would put them in jail, and I would tell them to go to treatment again after they were released, and they wouldn't go to treatment, and I would arrest them, and I would put them back in custody until they learned their lesson, which was my thinking at the time. As a 20-something-year-old that knew how to manage my life, I figured I knew how to manage other people's lives as well. Turns out, if you don't have a place to sleep, you don't have food to eat, and you're concerned about people hurting and harming you and your family because you're dependent on them for a lot of things, such as housing and shelter and transportation, that it's damn near impossible to attend to your drug needs, to go to a treatment provider, engage in meaningful treatment. You may show up, but you're tired, you're hungry, and you're scared. You're not getting anything out of treatment. Those things are not. So over the evolution of the last 20 some odd years of my probation career, I have watched the probation profession become so much more well-rounded. The things that we provide relative to just those basic infrastructure needs for people, so that we can ask them meaningfully to do the higher level thinking stuff, to take care of their kids, to take care of their bills, to get employed, to get educated, to engage in drug treatment, mental health treatment. That when you help support them at the low end, you can actually assist in asking them more of the higher end. And it turns out science supports. So we've been engaged in science-backed, evidence-based approach to community corrections for about the last 20 years in California. Believe it or not, we were behind the curve. That had been going on across the country for some time before California got educated in that way and began to grow its practice around an evidence-based model, which some people would really compare to like medical. So if you look at the idea of diagnosis, treatment, evaluation, reevaluation, retreatment, etc., it's really a medical cycle that we're looking at. And probation has really gone a long way down that road to providing effective intervention for the people that are under supervision. Again, that ranges from a 12-year-old to a 75-year-old. Men, women, girls, boys, some of whom have some very severe mental health needs. Had a young man in custody over the last 5 months. Fortunately, we were able to get him through some state support into a local residential treatment facility just down in Sacramento. Such high need that we had to have one-on-one support with him in our institution in order to keep him safe from himself. Not that he was attempting to do self-harm, but he couldn't help himself from hurting himself because he had such extreme mental health challenges from birth, winding up in the criminal justice or juvenile justice system, that we had to figure out how to maintain his needs in that facility for months while the other entities within our county, within the state, helped find a placement for him that could more quickly pursue his mental health needs. The last place he belonged was in the juvenile justice facility. Well, that happens all the time in adult justice. People with extreme mental health needs, people with extreme dependency on substances wind up in our criminal justice facilities, not because our cops are over-policing the community, but because we are under-resourcing for people with mental health needs, people with substance abuse disorders in our communities. That is both a state issue, local issue, goes to cities and to counties. Something we've gotten much better at in the last decade, but we've got a long way to go before we go to a place where we're actually significantly mentioned the area, the scope of responsibility for probation. As we got better, we figured out the model. As we started employing evidence-based practices, we began being called upon by a variety of interests relative to solving problems. We have a bit of a tongue-in-cheek motto for probation statewide. Probation, near the solution in 6 months. So a lot of you probably heard years ago, AB 109. Assembly Bill 109, Public Safety Realignment, when the state, depending on who you talk to, dumped state prisoners on local communities. So there was a response to that locally in the development of the Community Corrections Partnership. Myself was the chair of that commission. The sheriff, police chiefs, education, Health and Human Services, county administration, county board of supervisors, courts, coming together, creating a local solution to a problem was created when states decided that 176,000 people in state prison was too much for a system that was designed for 117,000. So we began taking back people that we had traditionally been sending to state health. And fortunately, it's a pleasure to report that in spite of that adjustment in criminal justice policy in the state, criminal complaints have plummeted the last decade in California and in El Dorado County. We're very fortunate, also part of the context. We're very fortunate in El Dorado County. We have one of the lowest criminal offense rates in the state of California. There are lots of reasons for that. A lot of them are organic. We have high education rates, we have low poverty rates, we have low rates of disease, we have high rates of both primary education and secondary. So there are a lot of reasons that are endemic to health, endemic to a community being in a positive way, progressing in a positive way, rather than some of the things that other communities suffer. When there's low education, high disease rates, high smoking rates, high poverty rates, you get crime. It's common sense for most people. And sometimes you get bad policy. We're very fortunate, we have rather productive policies in El Dorado County when it comes to criminal justice. We have both a forward-thinking approach to law enforcement, but we also have a forward-thinking approach to corrections. And if a cop deals with somebody for 3 hours, I deal with them for 3 years. So we have the obligation of ensuring that people get the things that they need before they go back out in the community and when they're in the community so that they don't recidivate, don't create new crimes, which leads to new victims. So the probation department's primary responsibility is to take people that we know are involved in criminal justice, to divert them away from that activity, which typically has some underlying causes. So we now address them. That's really a big piece of what we do. So we now take a lot of people that would have gone to state prison, keep them here local. We take a lot of people that are coming out of state prison, and we take them back on the probation rather than parole. And we have a lot of people in juvenile justice that would have gone off to the state to be housed in the Division of Juvenile Justice, the old California Youth Authority. We now house them in our local communities, in our local communities. So these were all alignments that occurred, realignments that occurred from state activities to local activities, because we finally figured out we were doing better at the local level than state. So a little bit about what I surmise will happen in the future. I could predict the next 36 months to you, I would say we'll probably see two big changes in California. One of those will be a shift of more responsibility relative to people coming out of state prison to local communities. I surmise that the almost $1 billion parole industry will go away, and that all parole will be picked up by local communities. Because we essentially have a duplication of services. And hopefully doesn't hurt your feelings to know that the closest parole agent to El Dorado County is in Auburn. People on parole in El Dorado County are being supervised by agents in Auburn, in Sacramento. And I found one the other day who we arrested during probation search, gentleman on parole, whose parole agent was in San Jose. So you can imagine there's not a lot of supervision going on. There's not a lot of evidence-based engagement between the parole agent and the person that they're providing service to. So the idea that local probation takes that responsibility, especially in smaller communities where parole doesn't exist, makes a lot of sense and helps provide for a safer community because those people, again, are recidivating when they're not getting the services. The other thing that I would say is probably coming down the road at us, and it's already happening in some jurisdictions, probation is being tapped to help provide services and support for those that are people that are experiencing homelessness. In fact, my partner over in Placer County just this year was essentially named the homelessness czar in Placer County, and is now responsible for running the tiny homes facility out of the probation department. And it's frankly because probation officers are like Swiss Army knives. We're utility players. We can go anywhere on the field and do anything. We're peace officers, we're coaches, we're educators, parents when we have to be, most for our own kids, but sometimes other people's children. But there are a number of professional areas of expertise that come into this profession, and because of that ability to be flexible and that ability to solve problems, which we are known to be able to do as a profession, we're called upon for a lot of different things, and homelessness and expanded human corrections. So, anyhow, don't want to overstay my welcome, but do want to offer you guys a chance to ask any questions as you come out. So I will stop the formal. Open it up.
We'll start with the leadership team. Anyone here in the leadership team have any questions for Brian?
I don't know that
Or
I have
comment?
a question. I have a comment. I just want to thank Chief for his leadership and being upstream. And I think a great example is also with your Board of Supervisors with the Youth and Families Commission. And we are probably one of the only counties in the state who has independently decided to go upstream and look at our youth and make sure that they're supported, and have created this Youth and Families Commission. And what is remarkable about it, from my perspective, is that you've got probation with Health and Human Services and Education. And what better way to make sure that our youth have all eyes on them so that they're successful. And I think, you know, Brian as a champion has gone a long way to really forge those relationships so that we're really supporting our kids in the best way possible. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Frankly, it was a lesson hard learned from his professional. I was probation chief of justice. Somebody asked me, who are the two most important partners in working with you? I said, the sheriff. If you ask me today, I would say the superintendent of schools and public human services. And I need the sheriff and the DA as much as they need me. We work well together when it comes to enforcing the laws and engaging in law enforcement, multi-jurisdictional enforcement activities. But the reality is the work that I do is most well supported by people that are in the country and provide our student support through education primarily. And I'd say that's one of the primary reasons we have so few children involved in the juvenile justice system today. And that is across the country, across the state, and here in Illinois County. It's because educators have gotten so much more well versed in the trauma-based services that we are obligated to provide with what they do today. And they've taken a bigger role in that, and they don't expel kids, they don't suspend kids at the rates that they were 20 years ago. And I think that's a big reason this is so positive. There are plenty of traumatic stories still of kids and families, and when that trauma becomes so acute, supersedes what the education system can provide. So we wind up coming in child welfare and probation department. But again, child welfare, health and human services is part of the
Oh, man. I've got a whole page. Get to that later, yeah.
That's phase 2.
Oh, got it.
Come back next month.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for coming. You've come and spoke, was it at APAC? You've come and spoke to
Yeah,
us
it was
in the
APAC.
past. We had a conversation about
Yeah.
realignment. I want to continue that conversation. Would you say that well, let me give you a little background. I mean, I've gone into juvenile hall for years and had church with the kids. I currently go into Folsom Prison and have church with the inmates. I'm just giving you some context because I don't want you to think what I'm going to say now is overly critical. I have some background. I also support JOB, if you're familiar with that organization. Transitional housing for people, used to be drugs and alcohol, and then we're focusing now on people coming out of prison, okay? So I support that. I'm supposed to be writing a letter in support of a gentleman in Folsom Prison now to support his probation. So I'm just giving you some context so you understand I'm not being unnecessarily critical, okay? But, I read the reports like a lot of people do in respect to how crimes have been redefined, they've been, reclassified, and I've read the reports, that people have been kind of like similar to what's happened on our southern border, where people have been victimized by people who necessarily shouldn't have been released. And it's not all realignment and stuff. So, we're seeing it across the board with what's going on with the border situation. But would you say that the sheriff and the DA share your views as our other chief law enforcement officers in this county when it comes to realignment and as you claim, the successes of realignment? Would you say that and if they do, that's great. I mean, I'm here to get updated on that with additional information that's come. But let me rephrase my claim of being critical. I'm skeptical. So I'm skeptical. So no offense. But would you say that the sheriff and the DA share your optimistic outlook in respect to the results of realignment? I'm just curious.
It's not a conversation I've had with our recently elected sheriff, nor I heard him speak on it, so I can't speak to his perspective. I can tell you I've read plenty and listened plenty to this person's perspective on realignment. And I'm going to extend it to say, because this is typically what rolls off, is 8109, Prop 57, Prop 47. Right? Those all have to be disentangled for the conversation. But I can tell you that it was not something that Sheriff D'Agostini shared relative to my opinion.
Right.
I think that he knew the reality of the context Dorado County. But I believe that both Mr. Pearson and Sheriff D'Agostino saw things that were occurring in the state of California, probably attributed those more to 8109 and the policy change than I would personally say were a result of 8109. I'll tell you what I mean by that. So if you were to disentangle 8109 from Prop 47, best example.
Could you clarify for everybody the difference between 109 and 47?
Yep, exactly what I wanted to. So 8109 really was just the core of public safety realignment. It actually, that's the name of the bill, public safety realignment. And what it did was it essentially reoriented a subset of the criminal justice population away from the possibility of being sent to state prison and reoriented a set of people already in state prison to the responsibility of the probation department instead of the parole authority. The effect of that was that it should increase the number of local persons committed to long-term stays in jail versus going to state prison. Keeping in mind that the average length of stay in a California state prison at the time was less than 2 years. So I think a lot of people sort of forgot that context or didn't really speak to that context. And so it wasn't as if we stopped paying attention to a sector of the population. We just reoriented them to jails instead of prisons and probation instead of parole. That's 109 in a box. Like, that's all it was. Prop 47 is totally different. Prop 47, which is not a piece of legislation, although I would say it was a piece of legislation in the form of a proposition because it's actually supported by the legislature. That's how it was created. They just didn't think they wanted to go through the legislative process because they didn't think they could get it passed, quite frankly. And I will say, just so I don't bury the lead here, I was not in favor of Prop 47. My industry was not in favor of Prop 47 for these two reasons. It took felony drug offenses and made them misdemeanor, which removed from my profession the leverage that we need to get people engaged into drug treatment. And it even took away from us the possibility of engaging with them in the first place, because as with every other probation department in the state of California, I don't supervise misdemeanors. I don't have the resources to supervise misdemeanors. So we only supervise the felony population. And I neglected to mention to you, that's about 1,000 people in Dorado County for my 55 deputies that are supervising probation. So Prop 47 removed the potential of us working with those people in the first place and took away the leverage from us for encouraging people to participate in treatment. I think that's been I think there actually has been a horrible result from that public policy. And I can tell you that, and this is a little rhetorical, so forgive that, I saw it during my visit to the city of San Francisco this weekend with my wife. The results of Prop 47 I see playing out in big cities who are under-resourced relative to drug treatment and mental health treatment and have extremely high needs for the people that are abusing and are addicted to hard drugs. The other thing that it did is it took a lot of felony commercial offenses and made them misdemeanors because it advanced the amount of money you had to steal or value that you had to steal in order to make it qualify as a felony offense, which just like I don't supervise misdemeanor offenders in the community, absent extenuating circumstances, we get into that, so there was a question about that. Police agencies don't tend to react to misdemeanor offenses the same way they do to felonies. We can get into the psychology behind that, because there are actually accountability measures for misdemeanor offenders as well. It's just that you took away state prison as one of those possibilities. So when you had repeat offenders, they still were not being held at risk of going to prison. And when you remove that at-risk condition, you remove the possibility of plea bargains that involve reasonable jail sentences, get people away from the activity that they're engaged in, and reasonable commitments to probation so that we can begin to work with those underlying things that are causing people to commit crimes, bring them back. So I want to separate those two things out. I have for Prop 47 for those reasons, support 8109 for the reasons that I stated, and I believe AB 109 has been a success, whereas Prop 47 has been an abject failure. And I believe that if that conversation were to be had with just about any law enforcement official, that they would recognize at least multiple elements of that issue.
It seems as though the state, like we're experiencing in my capacity as a planning commissioner, our land use authority, they're dictating to us. You hear about it with the schools now. They hear a lot of maybe more conservative and concerned parents on the school boards want to maybe get, stuff out of the library that doesn't belong there in the first place. And so now you see the state trying to clamp down on that. And I see in your capacity, more and more of these unfunded mandates and like you described, and pushing this stuff back onto the local authorities that you don't have the funds for. I mean, it's concerning to me based on what you told me on your nearest probation officer. I mean, that's not a good service for the community. Pardon me?
Parole agent, right.
Parole agent, I'm sorry. Yeah. So that's concerning to me. Lastly, I don't want to hog much more of your time. It's a difficult book to read, but it's called Insane Consequences by DJ Jaffe. Have you heard of that? It is because everyone, and you mentioned it yourself too, it's not a criticism, but everyone always talks about mental health, but rarely do people talk about severe mental illness. And it seems like a lot of the funding is going towards, mental health per se, but there's a lot of severe mentally ill people in our community. I think a lot of it is exhibiting the homeless population that's in great part not being dealt with. And so for your purposes and it's for me as a novice, it's a difficult read to go through, but I'd recommend you read that book. It's pretty enlightening. Insane Consequences by DJ Jaffe. But thank you for my comment, allowing me to share my comments. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for your efforts.
Other leadership team comments or questions?
I find that chief probation officer is a misnomer. It sounds like chief reformation officer. And maybe that's why we don't fully understand the role of what we quote probation department. Most of us believe probation is waiting to serve some circumstance that will prevent you from having to go back to jail. And I'm not so sure that's kind of the business you're in versus trying to change the individual so they don't go back to jail. Question relative to resources. If the vision you see happening in the near term and the state parole goes away, is there any discussion as to what level of resources are going to be needed in the counties to pick up that condition?
It's a great question. The conversation, typically the way that conversation goes is the state begins to make overtures toward what their intended policy outcome is. Representing 58 other professionals, obviously my initial reaction is, what I would say to that is, you're going to under-resource us, you're going to over-obligate us, because that's what you always do. And yes, they did that during AB 109, and they did that knowingly during AB 109. And I will tell you that what they did with DJJ closure was, they said, well, it costs us $230 million a year to run DJJ, so we'll just give that money to you. And I said, wait a second, you have a centralized system where you run 3 DJJ centers that have 300 children amongst the 3 of those entities. You are now asking 58 counties to take the same amount of money and and run institutions that will accommodate the high level of needs of those kids. It's why we sent them to you in the first place, because we have exhausted the resources in our county. And you think $230 million is going to fix it. And we said, we need to be thinking in terms of billions. This is going to take billions of dollars for us to do the work that you were doing in 3 locations. Well, the state gave us the $220 million and said, work. Relative to parole, it's a slightly different story in that it's a $750, $800 million operation, and it is diverse. Parole is broken up into at least, I think they're in 38, 42 counties, something like that. So they have to support a large organism through parole and CDCR. And quite frankly, probation officers work cheaper than parole agents. It's just a fact. Parole costs about $11,000 a year per person on parole. Probation costs about $4,000 per year per person on probation statewide. So you can see there's a relative bargain being considered. Whether we would be able to do the same work for the $700, $800 million, I don't know. Do I think the state's going to say, well, we know it's going to take more, so we'll give you $1 billion, or we'll give you $1 billion too? So we're automatically going to be under resourced. That's not rhetorical. That's experiential. I know that that will happen. That's just how the state's working.
Any other leadership team questions? I just wanted to make one other comment for people who may not know that Brian took the lead of our Stepping Up program, which Dr. Claver and others are well aware of, and it was kind of being bounced around and not much happening. He brought a consultant on board. They've done a big study. We now have a path forward. We're seeing substantial improvements. And Stepping Up is all about jail interviews when people come to the onboarding of jails and understanding, does this person have a mental illness? And if so, how do we get them the proper treatment, not just put them in jail? So it's keeping those people with severe mental illness out of jail if they don't constitute a real significant temporary harm to the public. So that activity has been going on at a national level, and I want to give Brian some accolades for stepping up and getting that stuff done. We're now in a much better situation than we were 5 years ago, and I'm just hoping that that continues to get better and better over time. We put in leadership, we put getting a consultant on board, to turn the corner so we had better visibility of what's really going on. At least that's my take of it. You might want to comment, but I think we're doing far better in that capacity than before we made the change in leadership.
Yeah, we're certainly doing better today than we were 5 years ago, and I think, hats off to the sheriff's department for stepping up to that. No pun intended, or maybe it was. We're actually advancing activities in the jail that will assist in the reduction of the prevalence of mentally ill individuals. Okay. Jails and state prisons are the de facto mental health institutions in the state of California, unfortunately. And that has been the case for a long time. Stepping Up is just one approach to us reducing the prevalence of that reality by getting people the treatment they need when they are mild and moderate before they get to that severe state. That severe state you were talking about, that happens over time. You don't instantly become mentally ill to a severe level. That happens over time. It happens by circumstance. It happens by untreated circumstances. And if we can identify people that are mild and moderate, we can benefit from treatment early on, medication and counseling and family support and infrastructure. Because I will tell you, believe it or not, being homeless actually perpetuates mental illness as a reality. It's not, and they go hand in hand. You become homeless because you're suffering with mental illness. You get more mentally ill when you are living on the street, understandably so. So the effort of the Stepping Up initiative was one that really benefited a subpopulation of those people that are incarcerated. But what the sheriff's department found when they began looking as a result of Stepping Up was that they had a much higher propensity of people with mental illness in jail than they did. Because before the metric was how many people are taking medication. Well, that's a metric. What if a mentally ill person is not taking medication? They're not counted as mentally ill. That's a problem. So the sheriff now does a better job of identifying people who are mentally ill. I believe with a project the sheriff's got going on right now to expand the jail itself in Placerville to build a mental health unit, an all-female unit in jail, that we'll actually be able to bring more services into the jail so that we can help people get more well-oriented to normal prior to their release. So, I have a lot of highlights for that project.
Thank you. Anybody present in the boardroom here would like to? Go ahead, Tim.
It's really an administrative question. You were appointed by the presiding judge of the El Dorado County Superior Court. You get about 55% of your funding from the county. Who do you report to then, and who does your review?
I have so many bosses, it's not even.
Okay.
So legally speaking, I am appointed and removed by the Superior Court of Colorado County. Not the presiding judge per se, it's actually by a vote of the judges of Colorado County. So technically I work for all of the judges, but that's my appointment authority. So the authority that my office has is provided by California government code, and that's what instructs me to do what I do. I don't take instruction from the court, but I also have an indirect line of responsibility to the board of supervisors. So the board of supervisors not only sets my pay and the pay of all of my staff, but I have to live within the county structure of regulation, policy, of all the county policies relative to human resources and budget. I live under my county budget. I'm responsible to the board of supervisors for my budget. So if I overspend, which hasn't happened in 10 years, but if I were to overspend some element of my budget, I would be responsible to the county administrative officer, to the board of supervisors. And frankly, would be held personally responsible for that. So there's a lot of accountability that comes with my office in both entities. The board can't remove me as a department head, but I can tell you that one well-placed call from two board members, the executive judge of Superior Court, because I was screwing things up county-wise, would probably be about the end of the year. So that's the accountability structure. And that is the way it occurs in most counties in California. It's one of three things. Either the Superior Court does the appointment, or the Superior Court has turned the appointment over to the Board of Supervisors in full thought, or there's some hybrid option where they have a memorandum of understanding between the two, where it is a shared responsibility. That's the least common because frankly, it diffuses the responsibility and makes it a little anomalous as to who actually is paying attention and responsible for the issue. So that's the way it works here. John, is that okay? So far, so.
Well, one of the things I'll also say is the Board of Supervisors, in reflecting upon law enforcement, general salaries and benefits and stuff, were able to recognize that the probation officers were not being reasonably compensated, equitably compensated, and we made adjustments to that, and I think that's made a big difference. So,
Huge difference. I want to actually, it's an important thing to note. I mean, freedom retention in this region is a difficult thing, primarily because we live between Sacramento County and Placer. We're extremely well.
jobs I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
That's nice. I think John had to go back.
Yeah, and this could be a question for you, Supervisor Heidel. When are we gonna get the new juvenile hall, Placerville?
That actually is a great question. I have it on my list. I can certainly get be the Reader's Digest version. So we went back and got funding for construction. They all over time, and it is turned into a project where it is now a reconstruction of the juvenile treatment center, which is a 20-year-old facility in South Lake Tahoe. And the reason that that is an okay thing is, one, it's going to be a lot less expensive for the county. And two, the facility in South Lake Tahoe, even though it's only 20 years old, was really built on a design from 40 years ago. So it is not the type of facility you necessarily want to put the kids or grandkids in if they were going to have to be there for a long period of time. And now that we have the responsibility of keeping kids in custody for up to 5 years, for significant instances of time, it's important and incumbent upon the county to build a facility that will support that type of thing. You're raising a kid essentially. We're taking a kid in at 15 years old for committing a homicide. We're going to have him until he's 22. I'm raising that child during a very critical adolescent phase, and I've got to have a place that actually helps support that. And I will tell you that 18-foot tall cinder block walls with windows way up there that kind of let light in, it's not that place. So we're working on the new design right now. We've got a structural engineer that's looking at how much of the building we can demolish without creating structural issues for the building. Not that that matters. We live in California. And then we're going to expand that building, building new housing environments and new treatment environments, and then gutting some of the inside and reconstructing that, probably for around $14 million. And we'll have the architect is on board to do that project, and then the engineers are finished with their work in about 8 weeks, and we'll move forward to the architect's work. But still,
So the answer is there will not be in the near future any kind of a juvenile facility in Placerville. We're focusing the resources South Lake Tahoe. We were successful through Brian's efforts to out of the 14 million that we need to do the full facility. And that was a long discussion of how do we do this. Nobody liked the idea of sending all the juveniles to Tahoe, but from the county's perspective, an economic perspective, that was ultimately the best answer. But you still have a staffing challenge because unless there's differentials and stuff, a lot of people can't afford to live in South Lake Tahoe. They live in Nevada, and move over from Gardnerville or Carson City or whatever. Yeah.
Sacramento, yeah, people commuting from Sacramento,
So-
and that's a tough road to
So the staffing was a better solution,
Yeah,
at least in here.
And they'll be
A lot
separated.
of local churches.
The kids being separated from families is kind of.
And yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of local churches that have supported over the years. I'll mention just first names, Pat. I think you know Pat. And Josh, I think, is supporting you guys now in South Lake Tahoe now. So, but we appreciate his efforts and stuff. Easier commute for me to go down to Folsom Prison, so I do that. So maybe selfishly, but I do miss, we'd always tell the kids, hey, we want to keep you from graduating to the big house across the highway. So that's what I always tell them. So, all right, thank you.
Go ahead, Kathy, come on, speak.
Well, when you were talking about designing spaces, it just occurred to me that trauma-informed approaches are really big. And if you've got a 15-year-old there in your facility, there is likely trauma. When you do space design, and this is something we can talk about offline, but do you consider trauma-informed spaces that help look at really addressing what the kids are experiencing?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. The good news is, the architect with whom we were originally
brain research says that we have this period of time until 26, right? And so if we're not doing what we can between 15 and 22, we lose the opportunity to change the brain so that they don't continue to be offenders. So thank you for answering. I'm just excited here.
Our whole mentality around how to work with kids, so I do have one youth.
For the presentation, discussion, all of that. You're doing a fantastic job, and kudos to all the work you put into it. I know it's not a simple task, but I do think there are significant transformations that are happening in El Dorado County that have occurred over, the last half a dozen or more years, and they seem to get better year over year from my perspective. So thank you for all your efforts. Yes. Always a new challenge, right?
And the good news is, I don't know that everybody can say this, it has been 26 years that I've been doing this job, and absolutely love every minute. Like, I love what I get to do. It's an amazing career, and when I get to the other side of it and look back, I will have been fortunate to have spent my time this way. So I don't know that everybody gets to say that, but I will. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks very much. Send that to you, Cindy, so you can
Oh, perfect.
send it out.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you
We'll
so
put that in
much.
our minutes with the link and stuff, so we'll try to educate as many as we can. Yeah, really, really good. Okay, let's move on to supervisor communications. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, and then George, I think, has some comments as well. Relative to Central El Dorado
Thanks, it was
Hills,
very
there's
refreshing
nothing
to hear your remarks.
here at this
I
time,
a lot more
although
skepticism.
as a planning process, we're
Memorandum.
starting to talk to planning and
And also,
building
thanks
about scheduling a meeting probably in August for Central to come back to the Board of Supervisors. So they're trying to finalize what's going on with the development agreement, if there's changes there or not, we don't know.
Yeah, it's,
And
yeah,
get back
it's
to the board
unproven.
somewhere in that August timeframe. So that's discussions that have just recently come to that point where we're trying to get it scheduled, looking for facilities, all those kinds of things. So I'll have more information to share with you as we get further into that planning process, but it looks like it's coming back to the board and before the end of the year, certainly, and within the next 3-month time frame. So nothing new on Costco. We were supposed to get new inputs to the planning department on the project. I believe it was last week, and I've not heard that we've received anything, but I'm in that category. I'm anticipating something coming into planning in terms of a formal reproposal of how they would like to develop that property that they own, which is kind of the commercial center across the street from where Costco's proposed to build their warehouse. So I'll leave it at that. Project Frontier, you all know that they withdrew their application on May 11th. We didn't have any more information, but I will tell you that I got a text message from Karen Garner after Supervisor Turbo spoke to her today. And there are things going on that would give the authority to the planning and building director to determine from an interpretive perspective what constitutes an allowable warehouse or distribution center within, in particular, the El Dorado Business Park. So they're moving forward with those discussions. There will be a discussion at the Board of Supervisors on June 13th as part of the long-range planning matrix, which we've asked them to bring that back. And there will be a presentation, and I believe that Karen will be proposing then the ability to make a modification in the zoning code that reflects her ability to interpret things of this type, which she doesn't necessarily have right now. That's a subject to a discussion type of thing. But she's asked that we don't share a whole lot more information than that until we have the meeting on the 13th.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I'm gonna let you expand upon that a little bit, from your perspective, since you talked to her personally and I haven't recently. The last one I wanted to mention is we have held 3 strategic planning sessions across the county, May 10th, the 22nd, 23rd. We had an awful, I shouldn't say awful, we had a great participation. I was gonna say awfully good, but that's counterproductive. We had great participation from our staff members. I'll tell you that the sheriff attended all 3 meetings. He was very engaged. We talked about a lot about public safety. And I read recently that an email that he is willing to serve on this ad hoc committee to move forward. So that's huge. We have other members of that group that have agreed to serve on the ad hoc committee. Tomorrow's Board of Supervisors meeting, we need to select 2 members of the board to serve on this ad hoc committee. And the ad hoc committee is basically going to be taking all the work that went on those 3 days and trying to refine it to a vision statement, a mission statement, and then a set of strategic goals that we established as opposed to the way they're currently broken down. Each of those will have defined, let's say, strategic objectives, and they will have goals underneath them. So it's really taking all of this information that the consultant has collected, synthesizing it, and coming down to a recommendation that can be brought back to that original committee. Everybody that was involved to understand, did we capture the things you really wanted? Are these sufficient? And we're trying to get to the point of being much more effective with our wordsmithing, not just have long statements. Let's get to the point. For instance, I'll give you an example with respect to economic development. We're looking at more active type of titles, and we're calling that thriving economy. So consistent with what a lot of other Board of Supervisors have done with the current trends and stuff, we're not just trying to identify areas of focus. These are strategic focus areas. We're trying to identify how you go about accomplishing them and typically putting an action word with them that's more meaningful to the public than just trying to explain what economic development means in El Dorado County, as an example. So I'm looking forward to the results that come back. And once that has been done, we will schedule follow-up meetings with the public, take public input, a workshop type of format to make sure that we're communicating effectively. But this is really coming from El Dorado County's leadership, if you will, the ones that have been active and participating to try to get this whole thing gelled. And there seems to be a lot of consistency, I think, in the way people want to see things phrased. I mean, there's differences in wording, but at the end of the day, does it really make that big a difference? And my answer is no, we're headed in the right direction. So if we get that going, recognizing strategic planning should always be a living document. It should be something we update on a more regular basis than what we did here, because it's been almost 7 years since we touched the strategic plan in terms of this level, the high level view of it. And a lot of things have changed. So you change your high level strategic plan, command media, so to speak, and then you move forward with it and you let that roll down to each department and they can define their own goals. And so all that hopefully will be coming as well. So I do not know of the next planned meeting of the ad hoc committee. That hasn't been set yet, but we seem to have our team assembled short of the appointment that has to be made by the board tomorrow. Identify the 2 ad hoc committee members, and I'll just tell you the consultant we had recommended it be the chair and the vice chair, which would be Supervisor Thomas and myself, since we've been working with the consultant during the preparation period. But that's not defined yet until the board makes their decision, but that's the recommendation that he provided. So we'll see how that turns out, and I think that designation then will allow us to get things scheduled and move on. So with that, that's all I had, unless anybody had any questions on what I covered. Tim, you have a question?
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Actually, 2 different topics. First off, with respect to the development agreement for Central, is it then contemplated that that development agreement is being negotiated and it will be presented to the Board of Supervisors for final approval in August or September?
There's been a lot of discussion, and it seems like the discussion is centered around how do we try to find a middle ground between the community services district wants, what we think the public wants, what's in the best interest of maintaining a certain amount of recreational open space, and there's various proposals out there, but there hasn't been a gelling yet to get it to the final point where we can define it and develop it as we understand. Still discussions going on. By establishing a time frame that's going to be brought back to the board, kind of sets the tone of what needs to happen very quickly to form those agreements or not. And if there's no changes in the development agreement, that's the way it will be presented. The one thing I did in talking with planning to try to prepare for that is I asked that there be a fact sheet prepared. And both the proponents and county planning would have to be involved to define brief history of what the project's all about. When did it get started? What was the intention? What are the things that are by right uses of the parcels that they have? Because the public clearly needs to know, particularly with Pedregal, that everything I've been able to determine, they have an approved plan to build a certain number of single-family residence, multifamily that was approved by the Board of Supervisors years ago. And they can act upon that without changing anything. So they have that right. But that's not the way they want to build it. And when I look at it, that's not the best and highest use of that property. So my opinion is it would be better if we had a different plan, but if we don't get a different plan, they have that right. Whether they'll exercise it or not, I can't tell you, but they have that right. The other one then is obviously the open space recreational property behind Rayleigh's and the 98-acre golf course that was in there, and what rights are in there, and what can be used from that perspective. So again, I've asked for that fact sheet to define, can they build within conditional use permits, conditional use permits within our given criteria, certain types of features or amenities. That's been talked about at APAC. It's been talked about at the Planning Commission. I just want to make sure it's very clear to the public that if the project is denied, and that may very well be the circumstance, that they have rights to build something or to sell the property with those rights. People just need to understand what those choices are. So it's kind of like the choice of Project Frontier. We haven't gotten into that discussion, but that was originally proposed as a housing development, low and medium density housing, not an affordable housing project, not necessarily a workforce housing project. That's the way it was proposed. That shifted a little bit because the public was not evidently receptive of that or highly receptive of that. They looked at other uses. And now I think when you looked at it in contrast, they had a by rights. They didn't have by rights in that case because it required both general plan amendment and zoning changes to change it to a residential project. But you have to recognize that in most cases, the property owner has something they can build by rights. Not in every case, but some. So it's a choice of what is it the community would really like to see, because to think that the property is going to stay in its current state forever is not realistic.
The bottom line is, the Board of Supervisors will probably take direct action on a development agreement, and it won't be turfed back to the Planning Commission.
I don't know what's going to get it, so I don't know.
Okay.
I can see a high probability it could go back to the Planning Commission. It depends on what's in it. Okay. And how much it has to be defined. So if there's no changes, the development agreement is what was reviewed by the Planning Commission. I don't see it going back to the Planning Commission. But if there are substantive changes that need to be reviewed, and it's appropriate to send it back to the Planning Commission, that's certainly an option the board would have.
On the second issue, you mentioned that Karen Gardner is going to make a presentation at the June 13th board
Her
meeting.
staff will, and she'll be participating.
Okay. On
Long-range plan, so it actually be.
changing the definition of, maybe the definition of warehousing as it relates to the, I assume it relates to the business part. I assume this came out of the Project Frontier issue. Is it expected that the board will take action with respect to any change to the definition at that meeting? Because if it's only going to be presented, the public will have to be there to make any comment, and that's given what happened with Frontier and with another warehousing project, which I'll discuss when we get to the APAC report. The public's very interested in what happens with warehouse and distribution in the business center.
So the action I anticipate, not having seen the agenda yet, because we haven't had agenda review, is that it will be provide direction to staff. Because the long-range planning tool has a lot of things in it. We always need to consider, with the number of items we never get to and always backlog, what is it that's really important in this time frame? So the board is typically asked to prioritize things on the long-range planning. But the action I can see is providing direction. We want this to be done. We want this to be done as priority one. these two to be done as priority twos. The rest of it, if it has to slide, it will slide. That's the action I would anticipate. But then staff is gonna have to come back with a specific plan for each one of those high priority things. This is how we're gonna do it, this is how we're gonna implement it. They have ideas already, but that's subject to what direction the board would provide them. We like this, but we're not gonna, go to this extreme, whatever it is. I just have no way of anticipating that conversation.
Thank you.
Long list. Over to
Yeah,
George.
and talking about that, let me explain a little bit. So I had a conversation with Karen Gardner just recently on the phone, and this email she sent out, and basically what she said, I am working on a process of drafting a director's interpretation. The warehouse and familiar center uses the R&D zone. So today she had a meeting with Dave Livingston and stuff to try to draft this up. But with her conversation, she was looking at where R&D, it should be something different. And she says a lot of these warehouses and stuff, her recommendation is light industrial and heavy industrial. So that's what, and we're gonna restructure when it comes up on the 13th. So that's kind of what she is.
That would require a zoning ordinance change. Going
She's,
beyond
and she's looking at the matrix right now to rechange it, so.
So it's really two phases. Does she have the authority to interpret and define what current definitions are for R&D zoning in the business park? And that's something the board has to discuss. And then secondly, when do we get the formal changes proposed to the zoning ordinance? They're gonna make this permanent and it has to consider everything across the county. So one focus is just kind of the current Project Frontier space and the R&D part. Second focus is what does it mean across the whole county? But because the one thing that I think a lot of current board members have recognized is there's never enough industrial property on in the general. Why? I can't explain that, but there wasn't, because I believe there should be industrial property if we're gonna have a thriving economy. We need some industrial property in certain places where it makes sense. And there isn't enough defined in there to really do it. So R&D, the business park with the business park agreement, seemed to be the place they thought a lot of that would end up, but historically, you look at where we are today and the answer is it didn't happen. But I do think we need to revisit as part of that planning process, do we need to designate more industrial property as part of the zoning?
And the only really industrial property is the one off Surrock Road. So a lot of them, that acreage up there is going industrial.
Yeah.
Where Bear Camp is, Blue Bank.
And I'm not saying a major shift, we're not gonna add, hundreds of thousands of acres of industrial zoning, but I think in some key areas it might be the county's benefit to establish some more industrial zoning and allow that land use in areas where it's not conflicting with local residents, and it makes sense from an economy perspective to bring that in.
But this is not something that's done. It's going to be a presentation, you're gonna give direction.
Not done.
The public will have plenty of opportunity to listen and make
Yes.
comments going forward.
Right. So stay tuned to the June 13th meeting, the way it's agendized, what the discussion is, because again, it's a long list of things, and this is one on that long list. But the expectation I have is we will as a board be providing direction on certain things. It may not be the full list. We may decide to continue some of it, like it's been done in the past, versus this is the direction. That was most recent, like vacation home rentals. We gave them direction on 4 items, and I think it was 5 items. We deferred the other 4 until there was enough time for committee, the public inputs, all to happen. The other ones were pretty much mundane in terms of, these are things we should be allowing to happen today. So let's get those done as the initial focus, and then we'll come back and look at the others. So,
Yeah, I got some good news, and
Yeah.
I just wanted everybody to know, Grizzly Flat has been a big issue, in the county and the community center up there. So I had a meeting with the Secretary of Ag, you knew all that. And it was a nice meeting. What I had, there was 9 people involved in it. Well, I had a meeting Thursday with the Forest Service, and the Forest Service is going to donate 5 acres of land for the new community center in Grizzly Flat. So we're going to be going up there and looking where we're going to put it. It'll be pretty close to the school that was there, anyway, that was devastated by the fire. So this is a great thing. Basically, we're going to lease it at first, and then, because it takes 2 to 3 years to do all the processing, the land swap and everything like that. So we'll lease it first, and then they'll work on changing, doing all the paperwork and stuff, and eventually owning it. And it'll be South County aligned. So. That's a major question. It doesn't happen very often. So.
And that is good news.
Yeah.
Back to this,
Look.
this green area. Lots of concern the park.
Business park?
That will bear directly into how we define urban development going forward.
Why don't you comment on that when we get to those,
We will.
part of leadership
At the
team.
time.
Yeah. But you can make comments on a leadership team meeting.
Well, no, absolutely. No.
Okay. Okay.
I think.
Yeah, question?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to your previous statement, just from the fire department's perspective, down in the business park, I think, obviously we were seeing some, unintended consequences really, and that is originally designed as a business park, but over the years, we've made some changes, and now there's a healthy amount of residential that's mixed in. Unfortunately, we kind of put these two pitting it against each other. And so there's some pretty significantly dangerous buildings, if you will. I don't want to, it's not to alert anybody, it's just, or alarm anybody, but there is potential down there. So as we're making these decisions on changing the zoning in the future, I just ask that we consider that or include the fire department to help you with that. Because like I said, it's interesting having light industrial, commercial. They're doing some pretty interesting things. So we'd be interested to see what that comes out as well.
Yeah, it'll definitely happen as part of that zoning ordinance update.
Perfect.
Long process to make sure that we collected all the inputs and understand it. I guess probably I'll leave it at that, but there's other proposed uses in the business park that I understand they reached out to the fire department and started those discussions.
Yes.
That's where we're trying to send them.
Yes.
Where's the pinch point? In one case, when they were looking at development, the pinch point was PG&E. Did PG&E provide the power to bring in this outstanding company that's going to provide high-paying jobs and stuff? And the answer was no. PG&E can't commit to it. So we lost a really good employment opportunity. They told us, I guess offhand, that we were their first choice, El Dorado County, but they couldn't sit on the matrix of what's PG&E going to deliver. And so PG&E is now giving restrictions as to how much power they will provide to any given site, and saying we can only give you this much in the early time frame, and then we can talk about expanding it over time. And so I'm really starting to wonder what's really going on with the CPUC and the state and all those entities that control what happens with PG&E, that they're not getting the resources they need to commit to economic development. So it's troubling. We need to peel back the onion a little bit and better understand that. So I didn't understand the circumstances until a recent conversation where that information kind of came out. But where we see, and this is George and I, where the supervisors see pinch point, hard spots, whatever, we try to refer them to the proper organization. Certainly make a presentation to APAC. We need to have the community get involved at the right time, and things are pretty well defined. But also, if you think there may be a fire service issue, if you think there may be a community benefit issue, whether it's the CSD or the fire department, we want you to talk to those things up front, so it doesn't come in at the planning commission hearing only, or at the board of supervisors. Holistically, look at all that stuff up front and make sure people have a clear definition of what their path forward is or not, right? These are things that can't be on the ground. These are things with the proper conditions applied would be appropriate. So again, I think it comes back to the planning commission's primary role, as a lot of said, is establishing those conditions, which staff doesn't necessarily propose. Because in that dialogue, there's always things that pop up that, yeah, we probably ought to consider another condition, whether it's hours of operation, whatever it is, right? Because of the impact of the public. So I very much encourage that discussion, and as much of that information gets out. But that said, biggest issue I have with this is people who hypothesize and speculate and just get way out of control with what's reading. You see that in newspapers, and you see that on social media, and it's just wrong to try to take something that possibly could be a great project for the community and to try to put out so much misinformation that everybody's misinformed about what's going on, and then they get all mad about it. So at the county level, we're also trying to talk about how do we address those things more upfront with the information we can provide so that people don't get misinformation. I'm not going to try to control social media. That's impossible. But at least the leadership of some of these organizations need to have the facts before them. So again, I'll reflect back on Project Frontier and the great work that APAC did. They did a lot of hard work. They provided us sound recommendations, which the board didn't get to hear, but that work needed to be recognized. So
I'd add to that point, just getting all of us in the same room at the same time. So even talking to different applicants, having 3 or 4 or 5 different meetings, sometimes information is different. So getting us all in the same room so we can all hear it at the same time, I think will be helpful also.
Participate in the TAC review?
We have I do have some of my team members go to the TAC.
Okay, because that's really where it starts, in my opinion.
Okay.
All from that, but that doesn't include the public.
Yes, correct.
Clearly want to hear all of the service providers, especially district inputs, all that kind of stuff at that level. So any proponent is not surprised by something later on, it's brought up in that discussion.
Absolutely.
I think that's the best result for the public. All right, very good. George, did you have anything else?
Well, pretty much that's it. So I'm gonna get out of here.
Okay, very good, fair enough. All right.
I'm gonna talk to you first.
We gotta stay for the whole meeting.
Heck no. You want his presentation or discussion?
Well,
Because
I
that's what's
talk to
next.
him right now over that.
Okay. So, I think the only public safety representative we have here this evening is our fire chief. So Mo, is the floor is yours? Yeah.
All right, try to stand up. this time.
Yes,
I'm gonna sit
yes,
down the
yes.
whole time.
And I get it. I'm a senator, not a congressman. Anyway. All right. I'll see you later.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow,
Yeah.
9 o'clock. Okay.
All right, now they're both working. I'm gonna turn that one off now. All right, good evening, Mo Johnson. It's my honor to be your fire chief here today, and Chief Lilienthal is on a much-needed vacation, and so you got me tonight. Anyway, I'll give you a quick update on a couple different things. Our fire training center is about 96% completed. It is a beautiful site. It is, it's off the charts. And so we look forward to having a public grand opening probably in October. So we're in the planning phase on that. We are going to do a smaller family and employee event, which is just kind of dedicating it to them. And they've been waiting 20 years for this. And so we'll be doing that here shortly. So you will see some activity down at the training center. I'm happy to announce that we are on task, on track, and on budget. So that was important. There was nothing that was over and above what we were allotted to spend at the training facility. We have had significant interest from other agencies as well as other entities, and I'm pleased to announce that Folsom Lake College, they are bringing back their fire technology program, and that was something that we've been working with them for about 9 months now. The Board of Supervisors and John specifically jumped right out there and gave us a letter of support. But over and above that, we got 22 letters of support from the largest, most powerful fire agencies in the state wrote letters on our behalf, EDCO, and just a number of folks. And so there was an overwhelming amount of support for that program coming back, being hosted at our fire training center. So we're excited for that.
I was going to say, that's a community resource. The fire department has always looked at
Yes.
what publicly facilities like this conference room should be maximum use for the public, right?
Absolutely.
It's got to be in a controlled environment, but this is another case where that training facility offers an awful lot of classroom space and other training, and I'm hoping a lot of other organizations do sign up and use, right?
Absolutely. And they are. The other announcement really is we are forming a regional training consortium. And really that's to look at our training center, is to look at the training staff that we have. And we all know that we're short-staffed in those areas. So it's really putting our training staffs together to get them to work together, being able to bounce things off of each other. We're looking at a regional burn cadre, which is the firefighters or instructors that set fires in the buildings, not pyromaniacs, but in the buildings for training. They're going to be from all over this region to come in. One, it helps them and their departments, and two is no one agency can do all the burning for their organization. So we're going to have a pretty large burn cadre, and it's nice to have that regional. PG&E has also become a partner of ours out there. We'll be making a more specific announcement on what they're doing, but they are investing, if you will, at the training center. I'll be excited to bring you more information on that. We recently purchased SCBAs, or what we call self-contained breathing apparatus. Ours were timing out. And so that's really the lifeblood of any firefighter going into a burning building. That's the tank on their back, the mask on their face. We finally got up to where everybody else really in the state has gone to, is this new model and brand. And so we're pleased to announce that finally we have that up and going, and that should be going into service here relatively quickly. Fire Scope is coming to town. And so what Fire Scope is Firefighting Resources of California, Organized for Potential Emergency. We are hosting that meeting. I sit as one of the board members representing all fire districts in Northern California, and we move that meeting around to different locations. It will be here July 11th and 12th. It'll be at District Church. And so really that is all of the major fire agencies in the state of California, including CAL FIRE, the Forest Service, LA County, LA City, Ventura, Orange County, you name it. All of those agencies, fire chiefs will be here to discuss the issues in the fire service and some of the challenges. And so we're excited to host that meeting. We have one fire truck on order, one fire engine on order. Obviously, we have the lake boat that we've talked about before, and those are items that we've purchased some time ago. Unfortunately, with the supply chain issues and those kinds of things, we are years out on some of them, and I truly mean years out. So the engine and the truck, typically you get those in a matter of months, and now we were told 24 to 36 months. And so we purchased them last year, and we won't even go back to do a pre-construction till the end of this year, and then it takes a number of months to actually have them built. So we're having to change our mindset in how we purchase fire engines, because we've got a capital replacement program, and that program says this is when we buy it. We save money every year, and when it's time to buy it, the money's already there. Well, the challenge is that we now have to look 2 years before that or 3 years before that and actually purchase it 2 to 3 years early so that we actually have it when that other apparatus times out. So it's an interesting formula to have to look at.
Well, by
That's
the way,
where
the
we're at.
cost doubles.
It does.
Supply chain isn't there, everything is.
It absolutely does. A fire engine is $1.2 million now, and that blows my mind. You know, I can remember when they're $400,000, and that was a lot of money, but that's just kind of where they're at. We are also, we have a special operations vehicle that we've been working on. So I don't want to get ahead of that council, but that is being donated to our department, and I'll have more information at your next meeting on that, but that's exciting. Community risk reduction, if I have just a few more minutes, John.
Sure, go.
Community risk reduction, I just want to give an update on that. You know, this organization, you know, customer service wise, that we haven't lived up to where we'd like to be at that level, and that had a lot to do with just the demand coming in. And we had a new fire marshal who came in and had to look at our entire program and say, what is wrong here? And really, that division just hasn't professionally matured at the same pace and rate that our fire department has expanded with all the growth. And so they've had to come in and she's had to come in and not only run the division operationally day to day, but also implement processes and procedures that gets us to the next level. So here are some of the actions that she's taken place. We've had, at one point, we were up to, in some cases, almost 9 months behind in plan reviews, just to get your plans reviewed. I'm happy to announce that we're now between 60 and 90 days, closer to the 60 days. Our goal is to, well, I won't say that number, but I don't want to put her on blast, but our goal really is to get that turned around as soon as humanly possible. So we're doing everything we can to get to that point. But we are at 60 days. We want to be significantly less than that. She's implemented a over-the-counter process, which is same day. So if you have all of your materials uploaded into the portal, you can literally come in with your plans, and we will have staff that's there, one of our prevention specialists or inspectors, from Tuesdays through Thursdays from 8 till noon, and they will sit down and go through your plans with you, and they will get those that same day. We've had a lot of folks come in and utilize that program, and they're getting their plans, you know, completed the same day and ready to start building. So, and that piece doesn't get out much, so we'd love to have that used a lot more. We are out for an inspector, 1 or 2, and so that recruitment's open right now. So we're hoping to bring on more capacity into the division. We've created a community risk reduction ad hoc committee. 2 of our board members sit on that committee, and so we meet from time to time and we talk about where we're at, the strategies we're implementing, the successes or failures in those strategies, and we need to pivot when we can or when we need to on those. And so that's been tremendously helpful. It's also given our board kind of a deeper insight, and the public a deeper insight on what the division is doing and why we're where we're at or got to where we're at. July, Chief Fields is proposing a builders summit, And that stems from just everybody says, I've always done it this way, and we can't do that anymore. And so really, she's gonna lay everything out for all the builders. This is how it's supposed to work. These are the expectations. Because part of us being behind is when we show up and you're not ready for an inspection, that's time away from doing other things, and now you're having to come back out again. And in some cases, that's happened 2 or 3 times. And so that's just time consuming. The team is also meeting regularly with the BIA, or building industry. They are meeting, going to their regular meetings, and they're giving them updates and working with them. And then we're also interpreting a lot of the new regulations that are out there. The biggest one lately is the 30-foot setback. Building in the 30-foot setback is very clear what the regulations are. The builders, however, want to interpret it a little bit different way. So we've had an attorney come in and give us that interpretation, and we're helping them with the way forward and the appropriate materials. The alternative is we just say, no, you can't build in the setback at all. But we're being reasonable about that and saying, if you are going to build in the setback, here are the alternate means that you need to employ in order to build in there. So that's a big change. Lastly, I have for you is we are also recruiting for an administrative training coordinator. And this person will handle a lot of what we're doing down at our training center. As it stands right now, we're using my assistant, Chief Lilienthal's assistant, and Chief Lilienthal down there. And we just really need to get this person down there to kind of coordinate and grow our offerings down there. So we're offering about 50 courses a year for firefighters all across the state. The collateral benefit that we get is those courses are here. It reduces our costs, so we don't have to send them out. We're not paying for the hotel. We're not paying for food travel. We're actually hosting it here in town. The other collateral benefit is you have hundreds of firefighters from all over the state that are coming to our facilities, and they're spending money in our community. With that, I'm going to stop, and I'll take any questions you might have.
I just have a comment, I guess, and that's development fees. We need to recognize that the reason that capital project could get built was because of collection of development fees for a long period of time. I think it was 50% of the actual construction and stuff in the training facility comes from development fees. So
And there's a mix. There's between 50 and 75.
okay, between 50 and 75. So the bottom line is when people say, well, where are those development fees going? When it's a special district, it gets dedicated towards projects that they've defined as part of their development planning, right? And so this is finally something that's coming to fruition. But if it weren't for those development fees that we started collecting many years ago, despite the fact that some people didn't think that development fees were appropriate, there's certain political aspects of that, we now have the ability to build things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So we tend to sometimes think that development and developers are bad, but when they pay their fair share through development fees to improving the capabilities, capacity, whatever it is within the community, that's a benefit to the community. Because we know ultimately we're becoming a higher propensity for seniors in our community.
Yes.
I just saw some information that's in our budget review that says I think we're number 3 in the state in terms of the county, in terms of the population that's over the age of 60, I think it is. Wow. The statistics. So for a period of time we thought we were number 1. Well, it turns out I think we're number 3. But we're still, but growing, right? That percentage seems to be growing, and you understand why. But those all come down to services and other things you have to stay current with. So
absolutely,
I think the planning process is good. The board's been doing a great job, obviously, of staying the course and not just abandoning some things that were started many years ago. Because I think that's when you give up on those things, you give up on the community. That's the way I read it.
Absolutely, and our board's been great. They've supported us along the way. The community, Dick Ross, I'll give you a shout out. You've kept us open and transparent and asked the hard questions, so we appreciate that.
There you go.
Yeah, you've done a great job with that. And lastly, just really a shout out to my and the entire staff. I got one of the days, initial kickoff was another day, and we just really appreciate the fire service being allowed to be involved in that process. You know, we're not necessarily a department head with the county. I think the fire service voice is important there. The collaboration with all the county.
Very good. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
at the initiation of the Charter Review Committee, discussion was had as to whether SB 172 funds should be considered for fire services because of the need for extra money. We were fundamentally told that, well, that's something the Board of Supervisors ad hoc budget committee would better review. Has that money ever come up in the chief's discussion at the LAFCO situation?
Yes, this topic has come up a number of times. And as it's been explained to us, the county at the time decided to go for the half cent. And so they made a determination back then that it would primarily go with law enforcement, probation, and other divisions, not to fire. And so I think that when you go back and you look at 172 and what the purpose and the intent was, it was to offset some of the revenue that was taking away from special districts during the ERAF shift. That was one of the stated purposes. In our county, it goes to different organizations. We understand that. But that's a decision at the supervisor level. And in a lot of counties, I will tell you, it's all over the place. What we're doing is not exactly what everybody else is doing. Others are using it for fire. Others are using it for both.
I think that when you look at the fire service in our county, that might be one portion, but there's no one silver bullet that says this is the answer. I truly think there has to be multiple pieces.
Are you getting any feedback from the supervisors as to whether that adjustment would be considered by them?
You know, I don't think it's the appropriate time really to talk about that. I think what we need to do is look at the fire service in totality. We need to look at what does success look like in the end? What does the fire service in the county look like in 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years? Once we develop that plan, you'll be able to put a number to that and see what is it that we need. Because I can tell you that maybe it's Prop 172, but that's not going to fix the problem. So we really need to look at this thing in totality, not just one piece at a time. So that would be my recommendation: is blank slate. What does the fire service look like in El Dorado County? Once we said this is what it needs to look like, this is the staffing model, then we put a cost to that. Now you can start talking about, well, where does this come from? How do we get there? That's what I think. So I think it's more premature to have those conversations in that specific item.
I think it'll come up at Fire Summit.
Absolutely.
But I think that's the next step, is public participation will happen after the workshop. It's been on the radar, and it's been discussed by the Board of Supervisors, but no definitive decisions have been made still. But like I said, it's not the panacea. It doesn't solve the problem.
Right.
It helps the fire service, but there's still a huge gap, the way I'm reading it, from the standpoint of trying to make sure there's sufficient resources for sustainability in our fire service system.
Make no mistake, county's fire service, this county's fire service is in trouble. And I'm not trying to be really dramatic about that. We said the same thing at LAFCO. This county's fire service, look at some of the volunteer agencies, when you look at, one agency at over 25% of their budget is just for insurance. And that's going to go up again. When you look at some of the other agencies, there's one firefighter on apparatus. These are dangerous things. We don't have that issue here in El Dorado Hills, but we also have the population. Population density drives the revenue for agencies. So we don't have that problem, but there are partners. So when you start talking about closing a fire station, that impacts us. Station 88 closing would impact us because 86 is going to have to be covered, or they're going to go on call, engine 91 is going to be pulled through. First out, they're going to be covering. So there's definitely a collateral impact on any. The other pieces that we have, the boundary list system. Say the closest, it doesn't matter what agency it is, but could you imagine an engine from Georgetown responding all the way down to El Dorado Hills for a call? Every time you take a fire engine out of the system, that's less capacity, less reflex time that we have because fires fall. Financially, fire agencies, the fire service in this county is.
I would make the observation that, let's face it, getting the public attention explains all the empty chairs here at the gallery. But when people start looking at their homeowners insurance and the problems that is going to insurer, State Farm, I just heard, is not writing any new insurance in California, which probably tells me that my insurance bill is gonna go up because their pool is gonna get smaller. And that's how insurance works. And you divide the cost of the pool among those who are paying current premium. So we saw how Frontier caused participation from the public. When the insurance bills start to go up for nice, secure, residential people who don't think about forest fires, then something's gonna hit the fan. And there's gonna be a lot of concern over the quality of countywide fire service. Maybe that's not driving insurance, homeowner insurance rates. Maybe it's the big forest fire world, but it's coming.
It's not coming. It's already here. We've got folks in areas that are well protected and not really even in the SRA, and they're losing their insurance or their rates are going up. I don't think people associate the fire insurance with the fire threat with the fire department, so we just don't get that activity. But I agree, something has to be done, and looking at that. State Farms, I think that's only the first step. They're not writing new policies. When are they gonna look at those high threat policies they have today? And those won't be renewed. I guarantee you that's coming.
Crossing the premium.
That's the the very next step.
We don't want to get too far and talk about different insurance.
Yes.
But I'm already hearing more and more people say, I've got a notice of non-renewal. Can you give me some help? Who do I talk to? A lot of them talked to the fair plan and made that decision to go with the fair plan based upon what they were told, and then look at the added cost, and it's significant. It's not 20% premium increase. It's factors of 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 is what I've heard. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Chief. All right. So, Jim?
Discussing fighting fires. The reality is, you go out on ambulance calls. And we are, as a society, much more horrified at the loss of life than the loss of property. So an ambulance doesn't make it to the old guy who's having a heart attack and he perishes. And that's far more alarming than someone's house burning down. Yes or no?
I think it's kind of a mixed bag. Yes, the fire service through a JPA, through a contract, subcontract, we run the ambulance system in the county. That is fairly stabilized at this point. So we do have 8 ambulances. We don't have, an opportunity or an instant recently where we don't have ambulances available. I think that fire scares people more than that because that is what's sensationalized. That's what they see. And with the fire potentially getting into the wildland, that's where you do have the potential large-scale loss of life. So I think people see the fire piece. I think that's more scary to them, if you will.
I would agree. The community-based fire risk, if we have enough time to get evacuate, what are the evacuation routes? Do we have a way out of here? We gotta get trapped, like we know happened with the campfire in New County. There were people that were trapped. There were people that died because of those kinds of situations. So people are much more concerned with the fire emergency situation than they are with the heart attacks and the medical service. But I think it's 85% of the calls or better are medical aid calls. They're not fire calls. So when you really look at the service element part of it, far more service is delivered through the PMS system, which always has an ALS engine responding, and there may be a transport or whatever.
In our community.
In our community.
Yes.
Not all communities.
Yes.
In our community, in Dorado Hills. So it has an impact in multiple ways. But I would agree. I think fire is probably what's most of concern to most people's mind, but they haven't understood enough about what their premiums are going to do in fire insurance to really raise up and say, we're not going to accept this. Fire safe councils have made a lot of presentations. There's been workshops trying to talk to people, trying to inform them, but it just hasn't resonated.
Got the insurance commissioner multiple times, and it's just, nothing's changing.
But it will become a big thing.
Okay, it's a difference between perception and reality.
Yeah.
You perceive threat of fire far more than you perceive the reality that an ambulance will not arrive on time. So when you talk about the county being in really bad shape, we
Yes, both. So when you look at it, really, there's two large agencies. So County Fire, they're controlling 5 of the ambulances. El Dorado Hills is managing one, Cameron Park is managing one, and Georgetown is managing the other one. So that has been unaffected. You know, if you have one of the agencies that's failing, and I would say at least one of those is in that group, we have the capacity to stand that up. So I don't think the fire service, or the fire service running the ambulance component is not the major concern, if you will. I will tell you long-term, structurally, yeah, we have to focus on that, but that's a conversation for the JPA to have through their strategic planning process. The ambulance process or program's not perfect. There's challenges there, but we don't have response issues at this point. In El Dorado Hills proper, and all of our stations, we have, in fact, every person that will come to your home is a paramedic. Both my deputy chiefs are paramedic. I'm still a paramedic, and we're the only agency that enjoys that. So even if an ambulance isn't getting there, you're getting everything you would get in an ambulance, with the exception of the wheels to get you to the hospital. But you're getting all the other medications, the tools we use for advanced life support, exactly the same as what you'd have on an ambulance. Did I answer that?
Now,
Sorry.
given the time element we're at, do we have any requests to go next from our leadership team? Who wants to go?
I'll go.
All right, go, Richard.
Since the last meeting, the Charter Review Committee held a formal meeting, and it will also hold another meeting scheduled for next Monday, meeting every second Monday. At our meeting we held in May, the committee reviewed very diligently a taxpayer association suggestion relative to department heads providing more specific information as to what they intend to do and how they can show that they have done those things. Several proposals were made. So as a result, we will be looking at the next meeting a particular recommendation where the department heads, those are both elected and appointed, will be making a public presentation to the supervisors as to what their intended objectives, I guess we didn't like the word objectives, the goals were going to be, and how they have during the last year achieved the goals that they have previously set forth. There was some discussion as to when that would be best done. I've asked the supervisor for some input on that. Staff gave some input, but it will be during the period of time during which all of the budget documentation is being reviewed. So whether they achieved anything from their last year's budget ought to be able to come up and be seen during the current budget review process. The committee also reviewed the condition in the charter in section 504, which sets out a formula by which the sheriff's department salaries are determined. And fundamentally, there are 3 comparator agencies that are used to determine an average. Those 3 agencies are the Amador County Sheriff, South Lake Tahoe Police Department, and the California Highway Patrol. It was the opinion of the committee, and therefore passed a recommendation that those 3 things be reviewed. We believe that, in fact, they are not really in sync with the proper determination for the salaries. And we have asked that in our recommendation that we're going to move to the supervisors, that the Board of Supervisors pause a study as to what is the better comparator. I would point out that in the current budget book, the CAO states The current compensation philosophy of the Board of Supervisors is to attempt to compensate all employees at the median of the total compensation paid to employees in Butte, Napa, Nevada, Placer, Sacramento, Solano, Sutter, and Yolo counties, and the state of California. During FY 2021-22, the board brought multiple bargaining unit classifications to the median. However, the Sheriff's Department does not use such a median process that is established in that charter. I think it is archaic now. It was passed in 1996. That was prior to the current PERS level of retirement compensation. And that PERS retirement compensation is creating a huge driving force, budgetary-wise, that it's questionable whether the county is ever going to be able to afford the pensions that are being paid. And the pensions in law enforcement are higher than those in general state and county services. So there's another ticking time bomb. It was the duty of the committee to look at that and make its recommendation. Just as a side note, our own sheriff, past sheriff's salary is the 5th highest in the state, and yet we are the 29th largest county. So the whole concept of equity of pay, the job task, and everything else certainly needs to be looked at. That will be one of the recommendations that we're asking the Board of Supervisors to look at. Also, the committee looked at determining whether term limits should apply to elected department heads and whether should certain elected department heads be appointed rather than elected. And it appears that the committee chose not to make any recommendation regarding changing electeds or term limits. However, we are going to hold in abeyance that as it relates to the county surveyor. Our county is the only county that has an elected surveyor, and it's not really understood why we still need to have that position or why we are uniquely more brilliant. And so we've asked the surveyor to come to the upcoming meeting in a week for more discussions on that particular matter. The committee also created and been working on a particular information sheet which we really should have had last September, but we had several people leave the committee during the tenure of the committee, and it got pushed off. But the current chairman really worked on it and produced a pretty good document that will be available for public and also be available online. So at this meeting, we'll be looking at the surveyor relative to it being potentially an appointed position. And we're also looking at a specific draft of language to put into the charter section 401, which would create a duty for elected department heads to provide information as to the accomplishment of their goals in talking to the Board of Supervisors. And those are the two main topics that remain on our agenda for next. My report.
Can I ask a question? I remember looking at the top retiree pays in El Dorado County, and out of the top 20, 18 of them were law enforcement, Sheriff's Department specifically. And they go all the way down to like lieutenants who are making the top amount of pay. So how will we be considering increasing them at a higher wage? How are we going to look at that when we're looking at their bargaining units and what they're getting in their retirement contracts? Because they have retirement, it's PERS contributions, but it's also their negotiation units, and they get more they are paid more in their retirements than anybody else in the county.
Because of the charter, that's what drives it. County Board of Supervisors have no ability to affect any kind of change to that.
Charter dictates it.
Okay, so so I guess what I'm confused is that they already make an extraordinarily amount of money in the retirement system, but we're talking about upping their pay?
Who's talking about upping their pay?
Because if we're comparing to Amador, South Lake Tahoe, et cetera, they're gonna have a less pay, a less salary than Napa or someplace else that's down in the Bay Area. So
CHP jacks it up.
CHP is,
so is that the one that's driving
Yes.
it?
right now, there's only 3 entities.
So we're relying on the CHP to do that. And I don't, and there's nothing against
No,
law
no, I-
enforcement. I'm
and
married
I
to a
don't
law
know.
enforcement officer,
You
and I
average
got
3
kids
data
in it.
points,
I
and the
mean,
CHP is up here, Southwick Tahoe here, and Amador County down here. So
Yeah, yeah.
CHP rises every.
So it's the one
typically
that's driving it
3 to
up.
5% a year.
okay, so there'll be a correction, and I'm like,
Well,
again, I'm not
I-
trying to diss anybody,
No,
I've
stop.
seen the top retirees
Stop.
pay.
We don't know what a study of the median pay of those different counties would be. But
Okay.
we are saying it's the philosophy of the board to look at that median for fair determination of salaries. Why should it be any different for people in law enforcement than any
No,
other county?
Perfect.
That's all this is
I just
saying.
was trying to make sense of it because like I said, and again, nothing against law enforcement. I was just shocked when I looked at the retiree pay in El Dorado County.
Joe
So
Hart
thank
puts out, I think, an annual report, we talked about the 100 highest compensated.
I've seen that. Yeah, I've read that.
And I think somewhere around 70% is law enforcement people out of the 100%.
I was shocked that it went down to lieutenants in the top 20.
Just facts.
In the top 20, and it's a solid number. And again, it has nothing to do with it. I'm just shocked at how in public service. So thank you for helping me figure.
The numbers you're referencing, are you talking about total compensation or just retirees of the past? So salary, again, that's kind of a misnomer. So what's reported out in Transparent California and is total compensation. So yes, in a lot of cases, I just want to make sure we're clear on it.
No, I'm super clear.
Okay,
I'm in clear.
got it. But
I just wanted to make sure that I understood the difference in it. And I understand, I know 3% at 50, I get how.
Yeah.
Again, I'm
That's
not
what our
against it.
recommendation is, whether the board of supervisors take it on, that's up to them.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, the recommendation. Thank you. All right. Who wants to go next?
I'll go short.
But
I'm gonna be at the board tomorrow at 10. Anybody wants to hear anything?
Okay, very good.
Time certain, 10 o'clock tomorrow,
Yes.
community heads will have, and actually, oh, sorry, see, that's what I just said. I do want to draw attention that we're gonna have 2 parents that are talking about their experiences in the HUD services, so it'll be quite moving, so, please see us tomorrow.
Okay.
APAC, if you want. Okay, APAC. Our next meeting is June 21, right here at 6:30. Well, one item that we know we will have on the agenda that I hadn't known about until about an hour ago was we'll definitely be talking about Karen Gardner's presentation on June 13th to the Board of Supervisors and the zoning definitions and things like that. So we'll listen to that and see what she recommends, and I'm sure we'll have a discussion on that. Second, if things have been sort of slow on the residential side until something happens with Central or something like that, but there's 2 things in the business park that are up for at least discussion. One is a proposal to build 700 storage units in the business park. We just don't have a lot of information on it yet. It's early days, but we'll at least bring it up and we'll be able to reference a track number for people to follow it and see what the issues are. We don't know anything. Is it going to be 1 story, 2 stories? One of the things about the storage units, not a lot of traffic. People usually go put their stuff in and they don't visit it every week. It's usually left there for a month or 2 or for years at a time. So maybe the traffic component of that will not be as heavy as some of the other proposals. The second thing is there is a proposal in the business park. It's a parcel split of parcels into 14 separate parcels. It is for a warehouse and distribution. We don't know a lot more than that at this point in time. It's, again, early days, but we're notified about it. And, I think some of the concerns from the APAC perspective are many of the similar concerns that were raised with Project Frontier. It's got some of the same environmental issues. We don't know whether, I don't think it's going to be a height violation because we haven't seen any plans yet as to how high it would be. It probably will fall with under the 50-foot limit. So that's what we'll be talking about, and anything else that comes up in the next week, we'll put out our agenda either Wednesday or Thursday.
Give you more information about the size of the warehouses before you get to your July 20, or June 21st meeting, because that's all kind of evolving right now.
Yes.
Submitted. Stuff I'm seeing says that everything that they're proposing is well under 100,000 square foot in terms of a warehouse type of size.
Yeah, I think it's a million plus, slightly over a million total, but it's 14 different buildings. And I think, as you said, the largest building would be 100,000 square feet.
There should be more information before your meeting.
Let's say they want to split it, the parcel split into 14 units. So we have to get that, figured out.
More definition required, but yeah, absolutely. So, okay, thank you for the APAC preliminary agenda look.
If I could dovetail
Yeah.
my report on Tim's. Before I do though, I'm pro-chicken, by the way, Maria.
I was gonna say the same thing. I support chickens too.
Although my HOA won't let me have them. So,
You can change it, start working on your.
to do the new announcements about the Carson Creek proposal, R&D proposal, which I guess just evolved today. We are about APAC is about ready to submit, probably tomorrow, 9 pages of questions.
Questions are fine, yeah.
Regarding what was previously submitted. If there is any way that we could have insight into what the latest information is before we submit those questions, that would be most helpful. So if Cindy or somebody could alert me or Tim.
You need to get it through your supervisor, George, so you make sure you get it,
Okay.
correct from him, and he's supposed to be having a meeting.
Well, this is really an APAC-wide request.
Yeah,
not just me.
yeah.
So,
He's supposed to be having a meeting with the proponents to get more details and stuff. I shared some of what I heard today with him, but he's supposed to have a detailed meeting to get more specifics.
Okay.
So he should have that, I'm guessing, within the next week or two. So,
okay, well, in the meantime, we'll go ahead and go forward with our questions. based on
Yeah, yeah.
the information we do have.
I think getting the questions out is fine, yeah.
As to what is happening down south, obviously, we've taken a big, deep breath in the post-frontier days. And last Friday, we called a meeting of the citizens groups, the 3 citizen groups that were primarily involved in the opposition. 3 homeowners association representatives, also Frontier for Four Seasons, for Heritage, for Blackstone. And we sat around and just chatted. We wanted to do it just because citizens. What did we just learn? How can we better respond in the future in working with staff? How can staff better respond to us?
Mhm.
We thought that there was a whole series of miscommunications through that whole process.
Mhm.
I know as an APAC officer, I think that I think it's fair to say that we were also frustrated in not getting some of the transparency that we had expected through that process. Fortunately, by the end of the process, we were getting it, and as it turns out, all is good at this stage. But I think that while you're seeing a lot fewer people here in the audience today, I can assure you that based upon the meeting I had on Friday, there are a lot of people that are very deeply committed to preserving the residential communities down there. And that a simple rollover and play good kind of expectation is probably not a fair and safe expectation for anybody to take it at this stage. We have to be able to join hands, be communicative with one another, and find solutions that are really meaningful. Not get into the kind of unfortunate on-throwing that we sought, miscommunication, as you said, and misinformation, we can do better. As a community, as individual citizens, as HOAs, and county officials. And we have two projects right now that have already gone through TAC that we're still trying to unravel. Both of them will challenge the traditional view of research and development as currently is defined. And there's obviously some interpretive issues with regard to what research and development issues are allowed and what are not allowed. And we need to really take a look as soon as possible how to shore that up. And,
That's being done now.
yes. Well, and that's
But
good.
it takes a while with our
But
system.
it's also important that it's not being done in isolation, that community groups are involved in that whole discussion at this stage. Because I think part of the problem with Project Frontier is for 2 years, a lot of this was done under a non-disclosure. And there were very few, if any, leaks of information until November of last year, when the first set of applications were really filed. And even with those applications, they weren't complete. And we had to dig deep and spend an inordinate amount of time doing research on a whole series of levels areas. Whatever is now being proposed on these two TAC-related proposals right now for the county, we are looking at, again, some of the same issues with transportation, traffic, environmental, biological impacts, and the like for both of those. And again, I encourage the county officials to reach out in a meaningful way to the citizen groups and the HOAs before we go down the road much further. So, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, and I understand where you're coming from, and there is an appropriate way to communicate, and we've had discussions George and I have with our staff as to how we do a better job in that area.
Excellent. Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see
And
some
we're
of
doing
the
the same thing from our side.
Okay, all right, very good. I think we're working in the same direction,
Indeed.
but sometimes you have to go through a bad learning experience, I'll call it, to really understand what everybody's interest is, and yeah, so I'll leave it at that. So who wants to go next? Okay.
Okay, the board is gonna be hearing the 2023 CIP. We heard it a few months ago, provided our comments. I actually did not, I was out of town for that hearing. But I'll keep my comments brief, because I think, quite frankly, some of the, you know, I'm talking to myself firstly, you know, with all the comments I had with our guests and so forth, but I think part of the problem is because we don't have a whole lot of people attending is because we have 3-hour meetings. And so I think we need to be always efficient as we can with our words and so forth. So enough said. But on the CIP, just some basic general comments, and feel free to chime in if I miss something, Supervisor Heidel. You know, it's always challenging financially. The CIP is always short funded. And we typically are seeing more and more projects kicked into the unfunded list because there's not enough dollars to go around. Projects, as are indicated here, specifically El Dorado Hills, our El Dorado Hills Boulevard overlay has been pushed out. The El Dorado Hills, the last phase of the interchange has been pushed out time frame wise. You also have your basic, which is typical, your cost increases and so forth. It's just, you know, I'm sure you'll be getting into more details in your meeting tomorrow, but those are just some general comments, and it's very challenging. And there's only so many dollars to go around. And so I don't know if you want to speak to one thing of significance concerning Project Frontier. They dropped the Latrobe Road widening project, which, you know, raised a lot of eyebrows, you know, when that was thrown in, myself included. So I'll leave it at that unless you want to talk about anything more specifically.
Well, when you say it's always underfunded, where does the funding come from to pay for capital improvement projects?
Well, we
Explain
have,
that to people.
well, okay. Well, I'll start with the TIF fees.
right? That's a major source.
right?
So,
Traffic impact fees.
yeah. So that's a biggie.
So if we're underfunded in terms of not having enough money, doesn't that emphasize the fact that TIF fees should be considered to be raised to be consistent with what the needs are?
Well, you also have, possibly, but you also have on this list, we have a lot of, public comments that they address, for improvements, which are put on here, but we don't.
That's on the
we don't-
unfunded list. you're
On the
looking at.
unfunded
Yeah, I'm not
list.
talking yet necessarily
Right.
unfunded. I'm talking about the ones that have been approved, that are in here, that are now being kicked down in time,
Right,
2 to 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 years.
right. And the longer we delay these, the more expensive they get.
Right.
And it's just,
So
it's a no-win situation.
Right.
But, is increasing the fees the answer? Yeah, I don't know. You tell me.
Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
You're familiar with this one. Bass Lake Road and Bridlewood Roundabout.
Yep.
Which has been proposed as a safety feature, has been proposed as an entrance to the Bass Lake Park. And what I'm looking at now in this CIP is kicking out the construction phase, the 33-34 to 42-43. It makes no sense to me when it says that all of the right-of-way and all the other stuff is done by 25-26, and then we're gonna pause for 8 years before we consider constructing something?
Yeah.
I gotta understand why these all got kicked out. If it's because we don't have the money, setting the TIF fee to be consistent with what the needs are is what's supposed to happen. So I need to better understand some of these things. But that's just an example of one that I was hoping we'd get done within the next 2 or 3 years.
That's what we were hoping for.
Right, and you've been actively involved with that. I mean, there's other ones like the Bass Lake Road interchange improvements to Highway 50. All of the planned activities have already completed. Part of the construction's in FY 25-26. The other part of it's out in 28-29 to 32-33. How much population growth do we have to have before we get all of it done? So I really have questions on why these got pushed out the right, and the fact that there isn't enough money. There isn't enough money because we're not assigning the right fees. That's first level fact. We have to look at
Well,
the
but
differences.
we've had these concept, here I go, I'm droning on again. So. But you asked the question, we had, in my opinion, bad decisions made from some prior managers. Fast Lake interchange. They came in and split the project up. We had a developer on the hook to do the improvements for the reimbursement. The department decided to bring that in-house and then split the project up. So you just had the signal and then capacity improvements later. And they could justify it, but missed opportunities.
So we have to do better. But the one that really shocked me was the Green Valley Road widening.
Right.
East of Francisco to east of Silver Valley Parkway,
Right.
which you and I both talked about
Yep.
meeting immediately. That's now scheduled for all activities to be FY 33-34 to 42-43.
We're dead.
Well, maybe we'll reduce our senior population by then, right?
I don't label this either, but there's an
We are
awful lot
problem
of
anymore.
the projects on the funded list I want to address, in addition to some of the ones that are on the unfunded list. So it's a difficult equation.
I'll be
but-
sure to chime in. I don't normally watch you guys, no offense, but.
Yeah, but we have to do something different. Just kicking the can down the road to where construction happens many years out,
Yeah.
that's not the answer the public's looking for, right?
Well,
So,
and like I said before, I think, we need to sharpen our pencils in respect to what are the real priorities.
Mhm.
And, I think the county, God bless them, they're taking on too much. And I think that you guys are gonna have probably a series of meetings to determine what are those priorities. I don't think we can accomplish them one here.
I would agree, it's gotta be a series of meetings, so.
Yeah, so, okay.
I mean, here's another one. This is the Harvard Way and Claremont Way intersection. The problem with the kids crossing the
Yeah,
crosswalk to
yeah.
get to Oak Ridge High School, which we've been talking about for a long, long time. We're now talking about construction in 25-26 and 26-27. What appeared to be like a 1 year we could turn this thing around is
Right.
now kicked out there again, and that was grant money. So grant monies are a big part of this if we get people lined up. If the message is that the DOT doesn't have adequate staffing to do this, then my answer is we better go out and get outside resources if we can't hire people and get these things done. So that discussion is gonna be had, but, and I'm not trying to pick on them, it's just when this stuff gets all slid out to the right, large steps, not a year, multiple years. White Rock Road widening from Winfield Way to Sacramento County line. You know where that one is, right? That's now planned for construction in FY 33, 34 to 42, 43.
Have we not learned anything from the fire department?
I don't know, but there needs
Do
to be
you know
a
how much
bigger-
it's gonna cost in 33, 34? I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
there needs to be a bigger discussion about how we deal with these DOT imperatives. I look at it, we can't just move the schedule out and say, we'll hope that we get some funding on it. We gotta address it, so that'll be the
so-
discussion the board will have tomorrow.
So on the planning commission standpoint, we got a hearing on Thursday.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be having a workshop considering the cannabis ordinance. So,
Oh, when's that? That sounds like fun.
Thursday, yeah. Well, you can tune in anytime during the day because we'll probably be there.
That was a requirement of the settlement agreement.
Yes.
Based upon a lawsuit, so that was what the commitment was.
Yep.
That's SIN taxes, yeah.
Yeah, the
First
problem,
five's funded by your tobacco, buy a
yeah,
pack, throw it
the
away.
the
Just
problem
saying.
with that though, and is that, you know, they're getting wiped out all the legalization, all the legalized cannabis
Yeah.
versus the illegal stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
The big article, the same issue in New York.
right.
All the illegal activity, the licensed growers, with all the fees and taxes that are imposed. they can't make-
Yeah.
can't make it.
And, yeah, and I'm hoping that the sheriff will be there, you know, which I hear sheriff will be represented there. I think they've done a great job along with our past county council, Bree Mobius, did an excellent job with that. Those ordinances, so, I'll have my coffee there and probably have a lunch break. So. All right, that's all
Okay,
for
too
me.
much information, but all right, let's go to Cindy's report, and then I'm gonna wrap these
Yes,
things up.
well, just
Okay.
the really, all the fun stuff happening in El Dorado Hills. Summer coming, the farmers market's up and going every Sunday in El Dorado Hills Town Center from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's a great event, so if you're there, if you could go on Sunday, I would definitely recommend it. The concerts are starting again, June 15th, every Thursday evening. It's the Live on the Boulevard concerts, again in the El Dorado Hills Town Center from 7 to 9. All of those are free. This isn't El Dorado Hills centered, but a lot of people from El Dorado Hills go. The fun El Dorado County Fair, starting June 15th through the 18th. The theme is Country Nights and Carnival Lights, so a lot of fun. I looked at the 10-day forecast. It's supposed to be in the low to mid 80s, so it should be perfect to go to the fair. So hopefully
We had an
people-
all-time record attendance last year, so we're looking for a repeat of that all-time record.
yeah.
We want to break last year's record, hopefully, so.
And then, June 17th, brand new Blackstone Park. There's going to be a grand opening on Saturday. It's from 9 to 11 a.m. It's in Blackstone Parkway there. I drove past there yesterday going on the garden tour. It looks beautiful over there. So that's a brand new park in El Dorado Hills. Starting June 23rd, the El Dorado Hills CSD is doing their concerts. That's going to be their first summer concert from 7 to 9:30 at the CSD Community Park. And the CSD is continuing their park parties. The next one will be June 28th at 5:30 at Fairchild Park. They have fun and games and some food for everybody. That's a free event. July 3rd, the Fireworks and Freedom Concert, awesome 4th of July concert and fireworks at the El Dorado Hills Town Center. It's from 6 to 11. I've been told that it's going to be a totally different show. The fireworks are going to be coming off of all different areas. Maybe Chief Johnson would know the more particulars, but I heard that it's going to be a really great show. So really high fireworks, low fireworks. Unless that's changed.
There'll be fireworks.
Lots of fireworks.
So I'm committing to really great shows.
I haven't heard it's a good
Where's
news
the
show,
best
but
place
we'll
to
see
sit?
what happens.
Don't know yet.
And then actually on 4th of July, the El Dorado Hills CSD is going to have a 4th of July pool party from 1 to 4. What's happening?
All the good stuff.
Lots of fun stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up economic development pretty quickly. We're still in the process of trying to redefine what the role of CDAC will be. So there's a subcommittee working on that, but there is an important thing to announce that we held a startup launch of the Incubator Accelerator project, and this is working with the Growth Factory and also GSEC to try to encourage the right kind of economic development from the standpoint of small business startups in El Dorado Hills and El Dorado County, but this focus of the kickoff was basically El Dorado Hills. The Board of Supervisors did authorize $500,000 in funding to help sponsor these entrepreneurial activities, and it's consistent with our board policy. So it received a very positive response from everybody who was in attendance. And so we're looking for some good things to start happening when we get this incubator and accelerator program running. And we have had the cooperation of the El Dorado Town Center owners in terms of doing this. So hopefully we'll be bringing some new entrepreneurs and new businesses and jobs and all those goods of things starting at the bottom, as opposed to trying to find an existing organization, company. They'll move to El Dorado County. This is trying to grow your own, right? This is the organic part of it, how you grow your own by encouraging the right kinds of things and staying track of it. But there is a policy that gets very specific on how those monies are monitored and performance, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to leave that one at that point. With respect to the fair, there will be, for those of you who are interested, Pioneer will have a booth inside to talk about if you're still not convinced what's going on with your solar, or you haven't joined Pioneer, be able to answer questions firsthand. So if you want to go to the fair, you can also go by the various booths, but they'll have an indoor booth this year. So hopefully that will attract a little bit more response from the community. And there's a lot of things going on in Pioneer, but I'm not going to cover any of those. So item 7. Our next meeting is Monday, July 10th. We do not have a guest speaker as of yet. I talked about some perspectives, but I wanted to ask the leadership team if there's anything in particular you would like to hear. I reached out to our assemblyman to see if Joe Patterson was available. I've not heard back because they had a lot of legislative things they're going through their bill cycle, so I didn't really expect to, but I wanted to throw the invitation out. In the past, we'd had Assemblyman Kiley come and talk about what he's proposing in bills and stuff. So I have reached out to Joe Patterson. He may be the guest speaker, but I don't know what his availability is on that particular date until they finish their legislative bill process. And I think that's probably the end of next week or something or other. So, but if you have any great ideas about county department heads or other people you'd like to hear from consistent with the county's work, I'd be pleased to reach out to them and find out. We have a surveyor come and speak. I'm not sure very many people are interested in surveying, other than when you have an issue with existing property that you got to get squared away and make sure it's right? Then the surveyor is really, really important to you. Our redistricting, so they do it. They and their GIS department is fantastic. They do a lot of great work for the county. I'm not trying to discount any of that. But again, if you have any recommendations, let me know. In the event that Joe Patterson is unable to attend, he's not able to make the July, I'm going to ask him, well, how about our August meeting or whatever, to try to get him in the
I
cycle.
read somewhere about Olivia Byron Cooper and Queen Bridger on the chip plan.
We basically said, come back when it's appropriate. They may be ready now, but Olivia, I know, has been really, really tied up with the homeless shelter opening and all that stuff. It's kind of overload, and I didn't want to push on that too hard until things have settled out a little bit there. But that's a good one. We intend to go back and do that again before the end of the year. I just don't know what the timing is. Who? Karen. Sure. Karen Coleman?
I mean, I think probably from Chief,
Karen
a lot of people don't know.
Oh, Karen Garner.
Excuse me.
Okay.
I don't think a lot of people know what planning does, how the process works, and it may be the planning 101 might be appropriate.
We've had Rob come down and make those kinds of presentations. I'm not sure how well received that was. I'm just concerned with using a lot of staff time to educate a very small group of people only interested in one project, and it doesn't stick more than 2 months. Right? Because it changes too, that's the other thing.
What about Superintendent Monticello coming to talk about behavioral health?
We have had Ed come and talk before, but not on that particular subject, so that would be good. Behavioral health in schools, because it's all connected, right?
Well, there's millions of dollars coming down the pipe to do wellness centers, and there they're actually piloting them in Georgetown, Camino, and South Lake Tahoe to put wellness centers in.
I know with respect to the El Dorado County schools, we've got services becoming available, but that's put really Office of Education.
Yeah, there's like $6 million that are coming down, but they're building a whole Medi-Cal reimbursement system so that there will be clinics in schools in the future. Through health insurance.
Not that it's a bad idea, but I know a lot of the, when school's just getting out, this is probably a good time when they're happening.
It's a very good point. County offices get really quiet.
Yeah.
In June and July. However, it's worth an ask.
Yeah, well, and
But that might have more time to do it.
we have other things we can do later in the year. It could be November, December if we need to. But yeah,
Well, and
geez.
actually, there's staff.
I
that
can
can
talk
do it.
to Chief Blumenthal, if it's such interest in the idea of presentation on how the fire service moves apparatus around to protect our community.
Okay.
In addition to some of the other groups that we're involved with that actually have a lot of influence with fire.
Okay, I think you're gonna get a lot of questions just about consolidation of districts and what's happening, and what's happening in Cameron Park, and what's your opinion. So it's gonna bleed into that, so, yeah. Okay, great. I think that's good as well. So I've got 3 right now in addition to asking the assemblyman, so that's enough to work with. And maybe we can get August and September and October scheduled and get on a path of having a regular series of these, so. Very good, appreciate that input. So, we will adjourn at this point. Yeah, go
Yeah,
back.
just in the spirit of transparency, it did come to my attention that the California legislature did pass a bill that does allow PG&E to add fees to your bill based upon your level of income. And if signed by the governor, it will authorize the Public Utility Commission to implement that new additional fee.
I don't think it passed yet. Just discussing.
I haven't heard that.
I was just talking to Alexia about that.
The news
Just
says
the news
that.
that they have just
That's
passed.
my story.
Well, it has to go to the governor for signature anyway, so if it passed through all the review committees and stuff.
Always back.
Yeah.